Did somebody say Protoss is overpowered? We've got 2 Protoss players through to the next round. We'll talk about that in a minute. Welcome back, everybody, to the WCS Summer Championship here at the DreamHack Zowie Open in beautiful Montreal. And there, you know, that's kind of real. It is raining outside right now. It was a little bit wet coming to the venue, but we're here inside ready for the StarCraft action. Thank you to our sponsors, of course, who make this possible. Zowie, Razer, G2A, our dear friends at Monster Energy, and of course, Alienware. Do remember your Twitter, hashtag DHOpen and WCS over the next couple of days. Okay, back on the desk as we prepare ourselves for the next game. Before that, let's talk about the last match that we've just had. 2 games happened, of course, with the second stream going on at the same time. And Protoss have gone through to the next round. Wellmu defeated and has eliminated Hydra in the very first round on the second stream. Let's start a little bit there before talking about Manikev.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, I mean, it's a big win.
I mean, obviously, I couldn't watch all the games because I was watching the PvP series as well, so I did my absolute best to watch both streams at the same time. But it just seems that Hydra does not really have a good grasp on CVP at the moment. I mean, I did see him try to switch up his style a little bit. He was leaning more towards the Zergling Baneling, but then at the same time, he just didn't have enough at home to deal with all the adepts. Like, what Wellmu brought to the show was nothing flashy, nothing super fancy, nothing we've never seen before. We saw a whole bunch of adepts with resonating glaives. We all know they're pretty good, but a player like Hydra is supposed to be able to deal with that kind of stuff a little bit better. For instance, like I never saw a single spine crawler in any of those mineral lines, and I think that would have made his life so much easier. Well, while I'm talking about ZVP, we're suddenly looking at highlights of a PvP. Why not, Sean? Thank you.
Yeah, why not? Here's Haas versus Mana, the game we just saw, and Mana seemed to struggle a little bit in the early couple of maps, but pulled himself together to be able to make sure that he did advance through Nathanius.
Survive the mayhem, you know. Some of these games look pretty weird. These fights especially can be extremely confusing with the large number of adepts that come into play, but as you guys said, made a cool head, and then the play he made at the end of the final game.
That was sick.
That was some cash money right there.
I feel like Mana was just a better player than Haas, and has been for a really long time, and I don't think nothing's changed. Series definitely showed that.
Well, and he does go through, which is good for him. Of course, keeps his dreams alive of a potential, you know, miraculous win to go through to the global playoffs. Of course, anyone in the tournament going all the way will qualify for that global playoffs. Let's talk a little bit about the bracket then and have a look at it as it's starting to take shape. You can start to see who's going to be playing in the next round. Funny that, Wellmu's going to be playing against Mana. Another Protoss versus Protoss to grace your screens tomorrow when we move into that stage. But moving forward now, Kev, we're going into a Terran versus Zerg.
Yep. And this is one match that I'm very, very excited for, because if this would have happened, Sean, 6-7 months ago, everyone would be like, well, you know, I hope for uThermal that he can take a map, but Serral is probably going to destroy him, because Serral was one of the most hyped players going into 2016. Like, he had a good run early 2015, got quiet, but then in the beginning of 2016, people were like, Serral, like, you've got Nurcho, but Serral is right behind him.
I mean, he started well in 2016. I mean, top 8 at DreamHack. Leipzig was pretty good, right?
Yep, and he was really good in Nation Wars back then, but since then, what has happened?
What's happened? Why has he dropped off?
Well, I don't know.
Doesn't play as much StarCraft as you, maybe.
No, perhaps not. I mean, he doesn't have the overpoweredness of Liberators to carry him like uThermal does on the other side of the thing.
He does, and uThermal, talking about uThermal very briefly here, he's getting a bit of a hot streak. He's just won a big tournament in Shanghai, defeating a lot of Zergs, which is obviously important talking about this series. Yeah. I know you watched all of him.
I did, actually. He's the IAM Shanghai champion. His TvZ is outstanding, and I'm actually favoring him very heavily for this match.
I think a lot of people should be here, Kev. I know you've got a bit of Kev.
Yeah, no, I'm honest about it.
Where are you from,
Dutch
Kevin?
pride.
This small country that represents the red, white, and blue, but no stars.
The Netherlands, of course, uThermal as well. I'm sure you're going to be rooting for him in this as well.
I'm always rooting for great games, Sean.
Of course.
So much passion.
Of course.
I do favor uThermal obviously a little bit, because not just Intel Extreme Master, he actually had a great run at the NSL as well. That second tournament that happened just 5 days later in Shanghai, made it to the semifinals and only lost against Snoot in a 4-3 series. So it went all the way, you know, to Game 7. So obviously uThermal is still in great shape, and that showed that the Intel Extreme Masters run was no fluke. But I still believe that uThermal is one of the absolute best Zergs in Europe if he shows up. So I don't think this is as heavily favored for uThermal as some people may see this.
Well, with uThermal, I mean, let me take a step back here and maybe play the ignorance card here. What's kind of happened with him? Because over the years, he's kind of been this kind of mid-level European Terran. He's not had too much greatness. He's had moments where he's looked like he wanted to retire from playing Star. I mean, everyone seems to have wanted to have that, but uThermal's had that too.
I've got it every ladder session.
But in the last few months, he has really risen, and I've heard whispers and on the grapevine that people are starting to consider him the best European Terran now. I mean, what's really happened to him? Why has he gone so good? Does anyone know?
I honestly don't. I should have asked him. I was actually having some words with him backstage there, and he just seems like he's in a really good mood. He's finally woken up at a reasonable hour. He had a good night's sleep. He's like, he's feeling good and he's feeling charged, but I should have asked him that. I wish you asked me before we this.
Why are you so good now?
Yeah, I'm like, what's
happened?
What happened, mate? How'd you get good?
I mean, Nate, you play Terran, you watch Terran, you are Terran.
Following uThermal is very interesting because what he does is a little bit more aggressive than most players come up with, and I don't just mean in the normal sort of way. Like if we look back to even just his series against Neve in that final ride, like he's not the kind of guy that's to shy away from proxy builds or extreme one base and two base aggression without taking all the economy. And I think perhaps it's a little bit of the X factor if you have to be worried playing against him because his macro game is also very solid, that he's not as predictable as other Terrans, which makes playing a straightforward game a little bit more tilting, I would say, on a stage, because, you know, we talk about the pressure, and he brought this up a lot at IEM, was that the pressure is on for his opponents, and he just doesn't seem to feel the heat.
Yeah.
Do you remember this one run that uThermal had in 2015? It was a qualifier for the Inter Extreme Masters Shenzhen, and out of nowhere, uThermal defeated Lil Bao, Bunny, Snoot, and I think Harston was the fourth play, and he played out of his mind. Like, he picked up Marines against Oracles, you know, every single time they lost half HP, he picked them up, dropped them again, and that was the very first time that uThermal truly showed us what he was capable of. It just took until last week, until we finally brought it to an offline event, but he did show it in the past a little bit.
And, well, we'll see what he can bring to the table against Serral. Serral, though, I mean, I think it's safe to say that the European Zergs are very comfortable in this matchup. From what I've heard, Nurcho's mentioned it quite a lot. He says the Koreans are playing the matchup wrong. They should be looking at what we do because we're dominating against Terrans per se. Yeah. Surely Serral falls onto that bracket where he should be, like Kev mentioned, he should be performing at that level and can perform at that level.
Stylistically speaking, I would say it comes down a lot to how much he can prepare for what uThermal's going to throw at him as we take a look at the maps. But I do think that has a big hand in it, and even the Koreans are starting to play that Queen Link style that a lot of the Europeans have been playing for quite a while already.
Well, here is the maps as you see on screen. I don't know if anything really stands out for you guys there that's alarming, standard, some may say.
Very standard. I mean, uThermal has been quite vocal about how much he dislikes New Gettysburg and TvZ. And like according to him, no Terran has ever won on it, and I think Marine Lord actually beat Snoot on it during DreamHack Valencia, but he doesn't like the map, so to see it vetoed, no surprise. Serral vetoing Dastan, well, I'm not exactly shocked either.
We've seen from uThermal some builds like this on like Apotheosis where he goes for more aggressive strategies. It's a very long map, it can be hard to reach your opponent, so I still expect him to bust out a bit of cheese because that's what you have to worry about when you're playing against uThermal.
And with uThermal having such a successful event in Shanghai, and just to recap it for some of you guys at home who, or maybe in the audience didn't watch it, he eliminated Snoot in the first round, he then went to beat a Laser, and then topped it off with a win against Violet to go to the finals where he won against Neeb. I mean, that's obviously very, very impressive, and with that victory, he's now out of nowhere, you pretty much can say, you know, in consideration for the global playoffs. He's very closely ranked now to the top 8. I think he's ranked 11 or so at this current point in time. With a good performance here, he finds himself in the top 8. Obviously, if he wins it, he goes, but this is obviously a huge, huge moment in his career.
Yeah, I think Mata is going to be sitting in the audience waving a Finnish flag. We're like, well, where did that guy come from? And then suddenly we realize it's Masa. But no, very big series. I mean, I don't really know what to say, but I've kind of got a bad feeling about it. Like, don't ask me why, but I really think that this could very well be the moment for Serral that he finally steps up. uThermal, there's one more thing, by the way, that we didn't mention yet. This is going to be the last tournament where he will represent AT Gaming. He's going to move on, most likely to bigger and better things, even though he was extremely grateful for everything that AT Gaming has done for him. He has so much love for that team, but you know, we all dream of making that next step, and I guess he just wants to move on to a bigger organization. Like, I don't know what, maybe even a Team Liquid or something like that. Like, I definitely think it has.
Cool.
I mean, it has to be big, right? Because if you're so happy at one place, but you're still moving forward, then obviously you've got very big dreams.
And the head-to-head record, we saw a little bit there, it is 80%. It's 3-1 in direct series, but they've never played offline before. This is the first time that they're going to be playing face-to-face, I suppose you could say. I don't think that really has too much of an impact for either of these two guys. They're going to just look at it as another Terran, another Zerg. Surely there's nothing we can really look at there, Kev?
No, not too much. Maybe the one thing that we can say is that I think uThermal by now does have quite a bit more experience than Serral. It's not Serral his first rodeo. Like, he had a couple of decent runs in 2015, early 2016. But This is not the year that I expected from Serral, man. Like, I can say this over and over again, but at the beginning of the year, looking at this WCS system, looking how good Serral was in November, December, January, I would have predicted you by now that Serral was in the top 12 at least of WCS points, and it would have probably made at least $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 by now. I really thought so. So to see the year that Serral has had, like, I'm surprised, and I can't really put it in the right words why this has happened. Especially because it's not exactly that Zerg is having the worst time ever, you know. Like, of course, ZVP can be a little rocky. Like, you know, I'm definitely the first one to admit it. When you see players like knee play and stuff, it's like, okay, I can see why Zergs are losing. It can be hard on certain maps, but why is Serral not having the year that he was supposed to have? Because the kid is so talented, he's so good.
And just to recap for you guys as well, Serral's, after DreamHack Leipzig earlier on this year, he's played in 2 other tournaments since that and was eliminated in first round, and every other tournament he just simply didn't qualify for, which is quite the surprise.
It blows my mind. It doesn't make any sense at all.
All right, so we're getting very close. It feels like the players aren't quite ready yet, but we'll be jumping into it very, very shortly, obviously, as soon as we can. Nathanius?
What's up? You got a question for me, Sean?
Not really, actually. Just looking at you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But in terms of looking at uThermal, I think that we've had a lot of over in StarCraft years, we've had a player who's won a tournament and then lost almost in the first round before. We've actually had the other way around as well. I think Snoot's an example just now in China. He lost in the first round in Shanghai to then win the other one that happened. Do you think we can see him bomb out here?
Consistency is a weird thing for uThermal because I would liken him to Snoot in a way that the emotional state is going to play a lot into this. He's someone when I talk to him, you know, it's like he'll talk to me. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go to this tournament. I just feel tilted because I don't feel like I'm playing a matchup very well. So it's something that I feel can come into this. But with how comfortable he's been and coming off that tournament victory, he seemed very relaxed. I was talking to him earlier today. He seemed super chill. And I honestly feel like if he comes in, he should be about as close to as he was in IEM. He seems very comfortable in this.
Maynard, how many Reapers are we going to see, mate?
Well, you know, he does like that proxy Reaper action. I think we're going to see, it's probably going to whip it out a couple times this series. I'm going to see, what, Reapers in total in the whole series or just first game, or?
Ballpark.
I mean, you can say just a lot. I'm happy with that. Doesn't need to be too specific.
Start counting them at home. I'm going to say 18.
18 overall. Okay.
That's in game 1 alone, mate.
We're almost ready for the game, so I've heard. Quick predictions then. Kev, where's this going?
I'm feeling a small upset here. I think Serral is going to take this one 3-2.
Okay, Nate.
Terran Bros, where we at? 3-1 uThermal.
Oh, okay, and obviously
3-0 uThermal.
All right, thank you very much, Jonah. It's time to go to the casters for this one. Of course, it is our dear friend, Rotty, joined by his best friend, Nate.
I'm glad we're known as being best friends, Roddy.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad now for Sean. I know that Sean really wants to be my best friend.
Well, we don't do tricasts, so... Not in this relationship.
It's going to be awesome, Nate. I'm super pumped for this series. Not often do I look at the round of 32 and then the matchup that jumps out most to me is a TvZ. Obviously, I'm a Protoss player by heart, but this time that truly was the case. I looked at it and I was like, man, Serral versus uThermal, that's going to be one hell of a series, and I really wonder if we can see that Serral that we haven't seen in a while.
And I'm hoping that we can see the IEM champion come back in this bracket as well for all the Terrans out there. We are loaded into Frost to kick off this best of 5 in the northeast position. As the Red Terran representing AT Gaming for his last tournament, he is uThermal.
Has been with them for a very long time, of course, a Dutch organization that has helped him tremendously in the past. Even after winning into Extreme Masters, he had so many good words to say about him. Let's see how he's going to do against this young man from Finland. Let's see if he can bounce back some of that, or find some of that former glory that he has had. It is a Serral.
A big shout out all the folks that have come down here for the first matches of the day. A lot of passionate Canadians in the crowd, Roddy.
Yep. I like it. I mean, they always show up. I cannot remember ever going to Canada and seeing the Canadians not show up. I mean, Toronto was awesome, but I believe people in Montreal will, they want to show up and they want to show that Montreal's even better.
Yep. Can you hear those cheers? I think they agree with us. So, Frost cross spawns. I think you know We've had this conversation many times. This is definitely one of those positions where you can't send the drops straight to the Zerg base like in the horizontal or the vertical positions. This is going to favor the Zerg defensively speaking, and generally is going to cause a little bit more trouble for Terran trying to go around the edges and catch those Zerg bases. This helps with taking the 4th base, which is extremely difficult if you get horizontal or vertical. Yeah. So this should be an ideal position for Serral, but not too big for uThermal.
No, I think Serral is going to be very pleased with seeing this, though, because we all know how aggressive uThermal can be. Pretty much in all matchups, he likes to be an aggressive Terran. That's why I think he's always been very fun to watch and cast, because he's not the type of Terran that sits back, builds planetary fortresses, and tries to drag
20
games.
missile turrets. He's like, let's go, Ravens.
No, he's the guy that has 0 missile turrets, and then like runs a couple of Marines around, tries to defend whatever he has to defend against, and then just attack, attack, attack. Very entertaining playstyle to watch. Sometimes can, of course, come to bite you a little bit when you become too predictable and people just know that you're going to run into them over and over again. But obviously for Serral, this is nice, knowing it's cross-map, so whatever kind of aggression uThermal has planned is going to arrive a little bit later.
Yep, and he's going to open up Overlord speeds. Didn't get a quick read on that as this Reaper comes in. Back home, uThermal is going for the super standard 2 barracks. He's going to be going for a very quick stim, 16 Marine, 2 medevac push. And his goal with that is going to be to try and get some damage done on the 3rd base, maybe cancel an early 4th, but generally it doesn't get taken that fast. This is something a lot of Terrans in Korea have been doing, and I'm interested to see how Serral will respond to this when he realizes it's happening, because one of the other things that's popped up is actually some Zerg players going for quick drops to counterattack against this, since you move all of your units out on the map very early on. If he gets caught off guard by this, of course, uThermal can do a tremendous amount of damage. Marines with stim, you know this, Roddy, in every matchup, they are very powerful.
Yep, especially if there aren't that many forces to deal with them. There's a lot of micro potential early on in those 16 or 14, 15 Marines, whatever Terran decides to fly across the map with. And if it's just a couple of Zerglings, well, they will get kited. I think uThermal is going to be relatively happy to see this hatchery being taken. I think it's well, even though if you would have had taken this one, and it's harder to deal with Marines on the high ground, but at least this is closer to uThermal, which means that his medevacs will arrive a little bit faster.
Yep, and the Overlord's going to come, do a little bit of a check. The Marines are there to push it back, of course, maybe not ready to get rid of it just yet. He's going to send the Overlord in through the right side, and I like that you mentioned the spawns, of course. These were similar spawns that uThermal had against Snoot in their matchup that they played at the Intel Extreme Masters Shanghai, and he did go straight across to put the big pressure on that base, followed up the early drop with siege tank play, so maybe that's something that we're also going to see in this series.
I mean, that was just a phenomenal game by uThermal, and of course a couple of people were critical about the way that Snoot played it. Maybe too many queens, maybe he should have tagged too high faster, but if you beat Snoot cross-map on Frost, you deserve it, Nate. I don't care what happened in the game. Like, then you've done a phenomenal job as a Terran player. But obviously, Serral has been watching those games.
Yeah. And I was going to say, the funny thing about that game was that Snoot actually destroyed the early aggression. It wasn't able to get a whole lot done for uThermal. So let's see what he can do now against Serral here on Frost, as he does have actually a couple of those Marines finishing a little bit late. He's just going to fly across the map, missing 3 that he could have loaded in. So you're going to try to put the pressure on this 3rd. 1-1 has started for Serral, so with the Baneling Nest, investments into tech and upgrades and infrastructure are key, because that limits the amount of forces he's going to have. The number of queens are going to be very important for trying to target down the medevacs.
I mean, we've got 5 queens out. There's 1 or 2, I believe, in production. I think Serral is going to be more than fine here, unless he somehow gets caught out of position badly. I think uThermal might just go straight for the natural. The queens are a little bit out of position, but there are a couple of Zerglings here. Well done. Great position so far for our Finnish Zerg players. Good
the units. Awareness.
Yep.
Yeah, the awareness is super important there. I mean, I like that you pointed out, you can't drop onto that many lings like that, especially without combat shields. Your forces will die so fast. He's going to come up here, try to attack up the front, but as you can see, the queens immediately target the medevacs. He's very close to losing those drops. Gets a good amount of the lings, but not able to put too much more pressure. Snaps up an Overlord on the way out.
Excellent micro there by uThermal. Not only was he able to kite his Marines very well, didn't take that much damage on his medevacs either, so he can stick around a little bit longer and can still try to find more openings. Well done by our Dutch Terran. Who's up, well...
I mean, there are definitely some things that can make this tricky. The siege tank follow-up, I think, is super important, because that 1-1 is finishing now for Serral. He's going to have that heavy upgrade advantage as this attack gets ready to make its push, or at least the upgrades could be finishing as the attack moves, and that 1-1 lead can be huge. We do not yet have those upgrades started for uThermal, so as far as the long game goes, when this lair finishes up very shortly, if he holds this attack off and goes straight for 2-2, he could get himself a phenomenal late game setup against uThermal.
The creep spread hasn't been excellent though there, because these tanks are going to get very close very quickly. We have 11 Banelings morphing, but of course these will be slow Banelings as the layer has just finished up, so Baneling speed is nowhere near in sight, and this can already be... This is one of these moments where uThermal's not going to try to win the game. But if you can get a phenomenal trade, he's loving life. And this is exactly what's happening already as he's picking up drones and he's putting on some serious pressure.
Yeah, a lot more lings coming out, more banelings on the way. Those queens ready to try and push the medevacs back, but he's got the tank coverage. Now he's going to be able to pick off one of the creep tumors, and Serral starts to spread his forces. He's looking first around, and uThermal says, you know what? I'm not going to let this happen. This is what happened the last time I played on this map. In this position, I was overwhelmed. I forced out the lings, I forced out the banelings. Now I'm going to go home.
I mean, that was very different, though. I mean, Snoot obviously loves roaches and ravages a whole lot more, so you fight a very different kind of army. In a way, I think if uThermal would have known how late baneling speed is, maybe he thought that Serral was buying time there for baneling speed to finish up, and obviously it becomes a lot harder to split your marines properly and, you know, be able to take a phenomenal trade there against baneling speed. But against those slow banelings, I think even if uThermal would have ended up losing all those units, I think it would have been decent in the end.
It is really tricky, though. I mean, Serral is setting himself up for the counterattack, and uThermal wants to grab that third base sooner than later, it would seem, as far as the way that his army is positioned. He's got his 1-1 finishing. You know what? Something important to point out is in all that Ling Bane that was started, and we're being shown this by our wonderful observer, the 2-2 is actually only just started. So with 1-1 finishing up for uThermal, he shouldn't be too far behind on the +2. It's going to be 1-1 versus 1-1 for a long time. That is very important to note. No giant upgrade lead for Serral.
No, I mean, actually there's an army advantage currently for uThermal because he was so cautious with all the units he's made so far. The first 14 or 13 Marines that he sent across the map, he kept them alive. Then the push with the tanks, he kept those alive as well. So he's actually he's in a very sweet spot when it comes to army size.
That's a lot of banelings ready to push that drop back, but he already had a force. He's like, where's the fourth base? There is none. There are still a lot of lings on the top right side, so as he gets ready to make this push, needs to be careful of the counter. He's going to step forward. There's the transfuse hitting the queens as they try to focus down the medevacs. They know if they kill them, the Ling Bane can chase the rest of the army, and uThermal has another force coming up to clear the creep on the northeast side as the Spire gets close. Finishing, the robot is going to come in. That one siege tank shooting at the lings, shooting at the SCVs, and the banelings are able to get quite a few of the workers, 11 of them picked off at this third.
Serral has always been excellent with his counter-attacks in multiple matchups. Zowie, they're covering the B stream today. They too will have 8 amazing best of 5s. I mean, even when we're not casting, you know, we sit in the green room over here, we watch both games at the same time. It's awesome, you know. As a StarCraft junkie, days like this are the best.
It's a good weekend for StarCraft, Roddy, I think, especially considering we're out here that's competing in this tournament at all.
No, they arrived rather late. Both of them had a little bit of difficulty actually making it here. A lot of the pro gamers were all on the same flight from Amsterdam to, I don't know if it was straight to Montreal.
Yeah, I actually talked to uThermal about this morning. They said that he ended up getting put on like they said there were no space on some of the flights to put them all together. So they ended up like going on separate ones, but he said that there was like nobody else on his flight, so he didn't understand why they spread them all apart. But yeah, they said it's like 40 hours of travel because of the delays that were caused.
Yep. I mean, one of the planes wasn't working that was supposed to carry all the pro gamers, so they decided to split them up all over Europe, and they arrived rather late yesterday. I mean, we wrapped up dinner at like 8, 9 p.m., so I haven't really had the chance to speak with them all that much, but I spoke quite a bit with uThermal, obviously, in China, and, you know, he was in a great mood there, obviously, as he won. And then even after China, like, he came to my stream a couple times, said hello, you know, he likes to joke around, likes to spread his memes just like you, Nate.
Oh yeah.
It must run in the race, all these Terrans out there love spreading their memes. So he just seemed in a good place. He said even though, like, holy hell, he's like, I've been back for like 3 days and now I gotta travel again already. So he may be a little bit exhausted just from all the traveling. I mean, 2 weeks in China, you fly back to Holland, you stay there for 2-3 days and then you fly to Canada immediately afterwards. It can get exhausting, and even though you are playing very competitive StarCraft, it's not necessarily the same type of practice as you would get from being comfortably at home for 2 weeks straight and just being able to play your ladder games and stuff. So I'm not sure how he feels mentally about that.
That is an interesting thing to bring up. A lot of the European players coming over here did have some difficulty in their travels. So whether that affects them, I was going to say, because I didn't even think to mention that, because I had breakfast with uThermal this morning and he was just like, nope, feeling super good. Everything's great. So he mentioned that, but it wasn't the forefront of the conversation by any means.
He's a very relaxed guy when it comes to stuff like that. There are a couple of people that they definitely get a little stressed out when things aren't going to plan. It's like, oh my god, you know, like, this is going wrong, that's going wrong, everything's going wrong, there's no way I can perform in this tournament, and like, I hate life basically. And it's like, uThermal's not like that. He just comes up, he's like,
he's chill.
He's like, man, I had to spend like 20 hours with Sword Off, but it was pretty awesome, you know, like he just seems to just take it all one step at a time. And I think he's definitely a little bit on, like, as you guys like to say, on cloud 9, you know. He's happy, he won a tournament, and it doesn't really matter what happens around him. This guy just won in 1 week over like $22,000, I believe, playing StarCraft 2. So how can you possibly be in a bad mood, Nate?
I have to agree with that. It does look like we have the lobby set up to get back into this game, so we should be in here very shortly. Thank you guys for hanging with us as we are as excited to get back into this Terran versus Zerg series as you guys are to watch it. Make sure you keep reaching out to us, even if you're here. Send us your pictures, the cool things that you see. That stage looks pretty awesome. Tweet hashtag WCS and hashtag DHOpen. We love hearing your guys' feedback, and of course, what you guys think about the StarCraft games.
And of course the predictions for the entire tournament.
That too.
I looked at this bracket and I actually found it pretty difficult to make accurate predictions. I think later today we're going to have True against Snoot. What a match in the round of 32. What a bad day to be the #1 seed, or at least one of the top seeds in WCS, and you get True in the round of 32. I mean, Snoot is never a player that's afraid of a challenge, so he probably just embraces it, but I know that if I was Snoot, I'd be like, man, really? I get True in the round of 32? That's not nice.
True is pretty good, and I think this tournament has a lot of interesting implications as far as that goes. I mean, the WCS points were brought up with uThermal, and you know, we got to see that top 8 earlier, you know, the projected top 8, as it were, you know, if the season ended today. And it's pretty much just Pult up there ripping the Terrans as well. So I think a lot of people are pulling for him to make it to the global playoffs just so we get a little bit more of the foreigner variety.
And it's not just about the points, obviously. The winner of this tournament will automatically
That's true.
get qualified for the global playoffs later this year, just as Showtime was for winning DreamHack Tours and Pult for winning in Katowice. So that's going to be, I mean, do you think there is a chance that one of the guys that's already 100% certain of going to BlizzCon is going to win this tournament? Or do you believe that some of these dreams will come true and out of nowhere qualify for BlizzCon?
I think it depends what type of, like, Pult, for example, shows up to this tournament, right? He's
Pult's got a great bracket, by the way, for Pult. Like, if Pult is in shape, like, you can pretty much...
That's what I'm saying, because he's had some sloppy results after that Katowice victory as well. So he's kind of been like, well, okay, I'm kind of qualified already, but, you know, I'm moving and I'm dealing with this and dealing with that. And then we talk about, you know, the other players that are way up there, and it's like, obviously, you know, Hydra's already out, right? So...
Well, Hydra's pretty much qualified, right? He's got enough points.
But I mean, I was just saying it in the context of, like, everybody he eliminates is someone else that could have had a chance to get in, you know, theoretically, if they were to go all the way.
And of course, for this man, the dreams are still so real. Earlier this week at the Intox 3 Master, well, this week I would say 2 weeks ago, he said, no, I'm not really thinking about the global playoffs at all. It's out of reach. I've had a pretty bad start. I didn't qualify for this tournament, and I just underperformed basically. Ever since Leipzig, I have underperformed. Well, that suddenly didn't even matter anymore, because he won in the Intox 3 Master Shanghai, collected so many points, and now the dream is very real. I believe he's currently sitting in 9th or 10th spot on those WCS rankings. So
the dream is alive.
Never did we have a Dutch StarCraft 2 player at BlizzCon, Nate.
I'm ready. Well, you're always there, Kev.
Not to play, Nate, unfortunately. I mean, the only thing I ever played was the Legacy of the Void beta there, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty good, to be honest.
Yeah, I lost to flying Swarmhost of Moonglade. I never forget. I was like, oh my god, these things can fly. It's like, damn it, Moonglade. Moonglade was really good back then.
Those are the good days, man. Just built like 30 Hercs. I'm like, these things kill Zealots so easily. It's beautiful.
All right, I believe we're pretty much good to go to continue game number 1. How do you read game number 1 so far? Because I feel that counterattack was pretty awesome for Serral. Yes, the upgrades are maybe a little bit later and there is no fort base yet.
You know,
I would say a small lack of creep spread as well, but I think it's...
I actually watched the game very similar to this morning. I won't give any spoilers, but let's just say, and even at the top Korean level, these sort of run-bys, especially with the little Baneling support, are extremely powerful. And for uThermal, I think this sets him back quite a bit. You know, that third base, fully saturating it takes quite a long time. And yeah.
All right, this is not right.
This is not right.
This is a replay. Or we can resume from replay.
Redo it again. It's okay, guys. We'll get it this time. We'll get it, guys. We'll get it. And the crowd's hyped, like, yeah, okay, it's somewhat working.
Like I think, by the way, like we obviously said in the beginning of the game, Frost cross map. Hey, this is good for Serral, but everybody out there that like watches a lot of StarCraft or plays a lot of StarCraft will know. It's like, well, yeah, duh, Nathaniel's and Roddy. Like obviously, cross map is good for the Zerg. Like we all know that. But I think for a player like Serral, this matters even more. He's not a Roach Ravager type of player. He's not a Roach Ravager all-inner, and he is a counter-attack player by all means. You know, he loves doing this, and he's been doing this for so long. So for him to have that ability on a map like Frost, where there are multiple paths that you can counterattack with Zerglings and Banelings, I think is even more important than for the majority of the Zergs out there that obviously love cross-map Frost for all the obvious reasons.
And if someone out there is wondering, you know, what makes cross-map better for Zerg than other races, the simple fact is for the most part, if you're playing on vertical or horizontal, the drop path goes directly to your opponent's main base or their natural without crossing watchtower vision. And of course, the Zerg, you're going to have those lings out on the map. You're not going to hold a tower with a single Marine or an SCV. The Zerg will just constantly be checking those, cleaning them up, and you can put your lings there. And if the Terran wants to drop you, they have to fly all the way around the side of the map, or they have to walk up to the tower and kill the ling. And that tells you, okay, hey, I've got units that are out on the map, get ready for an attack. So the cross spawn gives you so much more room to breathe when you're dealing with harass from either a Terran or a Protoss or a Zerg.
And I mean, it even goes in many ways. It's not just the fact that your medevacs arrive later on the other side of the map. Sometimes you send out medevacs to drop, and then suddenly you're the one who's being attacked.
Yep.
If you play vertical, it's very easy to bring those medevacs back.
You get there so fast.
Yeah, but if your medevacs are all the way on the other side of the map, and you even took the long route because you want to avoid the Zelnaga watchtowers, well, then bringing back medevacs that you send out is not an option anymore, because it's just going to take forever. So then you may as well try to deal as much damage as you can, etc., etc. The second map, of course, is going to be Apotheosis, which, you know, Nate, I would have said last time I saw uThermal play on this, I was like, well, that's going to be 100% proxy Reaper. Now, I'm not sure if he can do it like 3 high-level TvZs, or I should say competitive TvZs in a row, because he did it against Snoot, I think, back-to-back. I think he did it against Violet as well. He loves his Reaper action and on Apotheosis, but obviously Serral knows this. Serral's been doing his homework. He's been watching those games.
I'd still argue the map is extremely good for that style, and if he can get away with it, like, if you're someone like uThermal, you have so much experience doing strategies like that in these highly intense, small situations where you're microing very, very hard. I think that as long as the map favors it enough, the only thing that would really shut it down super hard is if it's some super weird fast pull that can kind of counter it, or you get like a drone on the barracks building it, and you just kill the SCV that's building the barracks. And like, well, I gotta send another SCV out now to actually do this cheese.
I mean, he's bringing like 3 SCVs anyway, or at least 2, and then maybe he builds one more.
I just mean, like, if you delay the barracks a little bit, then you can buy yourself some time. But uThermal, the thing about these guys, and we talk about this, and we talk about, like, especially players that like to be cheesy or aggressive, like Haas, like what makes the strategies work when you can kind of see what deals with them. And it's just that when they get into this situation where they're doing their crazy or their aggressive build versus you, you probably play versus that maybe, you know, once every like 7, 8 games on ladder, whereas uThermal might have a day where he's like, I'm going to Reaper cheese every Zerg I play, and he gets a ton of practice on that end because it's just a little bit out there as far as, you know, strategies that you see, at least on the ladder. So he has a lot more experience in those scenarios than with you. Just pulls you down to his level and beats you with experience.
That's the famous quote that people used to use about Goody in the German scene
exactly.
when I was still living in Cologne. I think Cloud was one of the very first ones to ever use that line. Of course, right now on the B stream, we've got a series going on as well. If you're interested in some PvT action, I believe Hero Marine is playing against Showtime in a nice Meister Shaft encounter. As I believe this time, actually, Showtime did not qualify for the players of the Meister Shaft. So this is Showtime his chance to actually show that he's still...
Take back the German crown.
Yeah, that he's still the best in Germany, or at least the best that Germany has to offer. The next series on that stream is also going to be Champ vs Marine Lord, which should be an interesting one. Marine Lord came off a relatively disappointing performance at the NSL just the other week in China. He lost against a Chinese Terran called Time. I must say I was very, very impressed by the way that Time played. And Cyan as well, man, the Chinese scene. I mean, it's not maybe the right tournament to talk about the Chinese scene, but damn, those guys look good during NSL, which is nice.
Yep. And it looks like we are still just trying to set things up to get back into this game.
uThermal does not look like he's ready to continue a game, Nate.
No.
I would be lying if I said that he looks like he's about ready to
I
micro
saw the replay thing on again. On the, you can see the observer PC out of the corner of my eye, but well,
it's all right, Nate. I like
we'll
talking. About StarCraft with you. We can do this for days.
That's true.
You know, Nate. I have a confession to make. My confession is, you know, some people might wonder, it's like, hey, Roddy, you never guessed the first series of the day. The reason why I do this, guys, is because I've been to eSports events for a while. Normally, if there are any technical difficulties,
it's always on the first match.
It always happens on the first match, so I like to sit that one out, you know. Like, I'm generous, you know, it's PvP, Roddy, you want to do it? It's like, you know what, mate, if you really want to do it, I'll let somebody else do it. You know, that's my generous act, but actually it's kind of a selfish act because I know that if there are going to be any problems, because, you know, stalling... It can be alright. Yeah, sometimes it's alright. Some days you struggle a little bit more. But I was like, you know, I can do the second series of the day because uThermal vs Serral sounds great, and there will be no problems. And here we are, Nate. 9 minutes in. Well, it's taking a little while.
That's okay. We're here for you guys. We are enduring this as much as you are. Other interesting things going on this weekend. We are actually going to be hearing this weekend from David Kim on some possible balance changes, some unit changes, Kev.
And I don't know if this is true, Nate. Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about that. I mean, I could talk about balance for days. But I also heard that Drake might show up and do a sneak performance. Can somebody in the audience confirm this, guys? Is Drake actually coming or not? I heard he loves Protoss.
I don't know, mate. There's some cheers for that.
People are like, go back to Toronto. That's Drake's
I was going to say, we're in the wrong part of Canada for that, I think.
Yeah, you say that, but I see people driving around the streets here, lowering their windows, playing Drake all day. I think Canada just embraces Drake.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, everyone's got to embrace their national idols.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that'll be, I think, the discussion, of course. I think it's coming in this weekend. I think it's on maybe Saturday that we're going to be hearing for some cool stuff. I think the StarCraft Twitter account has put out some schematics
teasers,
of the Cyclone. They put a picture of the Hydralisk up there.
Yep.
Goodness knows. What do you think? The Cyclone's attack gets changed with like nukes, so you shoot nukes normally? That way you bring nukes and Cyclones back into the meta?
I'm not sure if I can really talk about what I think, Nate, because I think I know. I don't think Blizzard is going to be very happy with that. Now, I'm very curious to see. I mean, obviously, sometimes we pick up things on before Blizzard announced it, but things still change as well, so I'm not exactly sure what's going to be happening. But I'm interested to see what our man David has to say about the state of the game and how he feels about everything and what the future plans are, because we do know that a couple of very exciting things are coming, but whenever you say that, people are like, well, if it's exciting, then just tell us. It's like, I can't, I'm not allowed.
Save your appetites for the weekend, boys and girls. It's going to be awesome.
What's your favorite series of today, Nate? Like, if you look at the entire round of 32, what is the match that stands out the most to you?
Honestly, I kind of wanted to be very hyped for Neeb because he's my boy, but I think he's got an extremely favorable match against Pili Pili later. So the player that I was second most looking forward to seeing was actually uThermal.
Yeah, I really thought that this was one of the most awesome matches in the round of 32 as well, just because I think it's so competitive and so close, a lot closer than I think people think, just because Serral has not been performing, you know, all that hype in the last 4 or 5 months. But
if I had to pick another one, I would say the last match today is going to be really sick. I think Puck versus Scarlet should be an absolutely awesome match.
I would normally agree with you, but I'm a tiny bit worried because I was not terribly impressed by the series that Puck played against eLaser in Shanghai.
Yeah.
It was not bad by any means, of course.
He didn't build adepts, though. He didn't build a lot of adepts in those matches, Kevin.
But I mean, like, Puck comes off to back-to-back big losses in ZVP against Stefano in Valencia and then against eLaser. So I'm kind of favoring Scarlet in that series, but I hope it's going to be close. I
still think it'll be an exciting match to have a Canadian advance then at this point in the tournament.
What do you think about Semper versus Nurture? Semper, of course, one of the more unknown players going into this tournament, unless you are Canadian and, you know, you're a diehard fan.
You know, Semper is... He's interesting, right? I think he is one of the Canadian Terrans that's here. He's been pretty good. He's the kind of guy, like, I've hit him on ladder and just get absolutely wrecked. You're like, God, no, please don't do this to me.
I played him in a qualifier once, right?
Yeah, guys, I think it was WCS 2014 Season 3 or something? Yeah, Rotterdam versus Semper on Merry-Go-Round. One of the greatest games you will watch of StarCraft 2 in your career.
And a real classic, guys. Like, I haven't played a lot of games, but that was a classic.
I think at 15 minutes, Roddy had a main base at Semper's third with a fleet beacon.
I'm like the Dutch version of Haas, man. I love it. Like, let's get it weird out there.
Yeah. Build the Great Wall of Pylons while you're at it as well. But I think he's good, but the thing is, we don't get to see him on this stage all that often, right? So it's like he's the kind of guy that makes it deep in the qualifiers. I think about players that do well, for example, in the Challenger events, right? Like guys like Jason, EJK, those guys go really far. Jon Snow. And to some degree, I would also throw in there Pili Pili, but obviously he's here. These guys are good. We know they're very good, but they seem to have, you know, that trouble that we talk about everywhere, right? Well, to make that jump to the next stage.
I also think it's very hard because as good as those guys are, you know, like as good as a Jon Snow is, like if Semper plays multiple games against Jon Snow, and like if sometimes Jon Snow is going to win, sometimes Semper is going to win, but then suddenly going up against Nurture, that's still, you know, that's just another level. I think
like I beat the guy that I normally play against all the time, but now I have to play against Marine Lord or Showtime. It's like these guys are on a completely different playing field.
I do think that Semper is like talented and good enough that if you give him an opportunity like this multiple times, that he's going to pick up on things that these Zergs do very quickly. But right now, you know, 1 best of 5, even though it is home soar in a way that brings a little bit of extra pressure as well, because obviously the Canadians, they want to see Semper win. I think Nurture is pretty much, I would say, normally you say one of the toughest, but I actually think it's the toughest draw that he could have got in the round of 32.
Probably.
I mean, Snoot, Nurture, but I think Nurture is ZVT, like...
But this makes me harken back to just talking about Neeb at the beginning of the year, where it was like the actual offline tournament experience wasn't quite there, even though he had some reasonable on-run results. Obviously, he's had an insane year since then, but you know, for someone like Semper, I would say, like, you can't go in with too many expectations. You want to come here, get the experience of playing on the stage, and then grind it out for, you know, whatever comes next for you, whatever that ends up being for next year. But as far as making an on-stage performance against someone that's like pretty much considered to be the best European, it's like, well, what kind of expectations can you really have, right?
You know, I was talking with Nurture a little bit earlier this weekend. Nurture, of course, went to the Inter Extreme Masters as well in Shanghai. He made it to the quarterfinals, which is a good result to many, not to Nurture. I think he got a little bit surprised by some of the things that Violet threw at him. He lost in a close TvZ series. I don't think it's something that we have to look too much into, that we're going to go on this, oh my god, Nurture has lost his Magic Touch parade. Like, it's just one tournament. He could have actually stayed in China to play another tournament, which on paper was not exactly the strongest tournament out there.
Right.
And it was a lot of money in the NSL. But Nurture said, like, nope, he's like, it's not worth it. I want to go home. I was like, but it was like, there was a lot of money in that tournament. He's like, yeah,
sometimes,
but he's like, I didn't want to stay 2.5 weeks in China. And of course, if you have to go to Montreal as well, and if you know, if you look at this tournament and the amazing amount of money that there is up for grabs here, I think first place gets $35,000 if I remember correctly. Just every round, the money goes up very quickly.
Yep.
It is often better to spend 7, 8, 9, 10 days at home instead of 2 or 3 days, which is what uThermal did.
Get home, be comfortable, practice a bit, and you know, maybe that's just the way that Nurture likes to live his life. Maybe he's got a nice apartment. He's like, I just want to play some games on my own setup.
He's got a nice cap now of Red Bull.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. And just doing everything that he can to prepare for this tournament, because this is so important. This is such a crucial one, since he doesn't have one of those big victories that's locked him in, right? You just want to come in here, make sure you punch in your time card. He's got a lot of points. He should be able to check in from here to the global playoffs. So it makes sense that he wants to perform as best as he can here.
I mean, if you talk about consistency, there's a lot of foreigners that are indeed a little bit inconsistent. I think Nurture's the polar opposite. I mean, he made it to the semifinals in Katowice during the spring or winter, excuse me. Then in spring during tours, he made it all the way to the final, and he showed us some of the coolest Zerg play we've seen all year. I mean, we never forget that game one where he played on the Orbital, and it was like an animation trailer. It was like Nidus, hit squad, drop. It's just like, oh my god, like this doesn't even happen in real games with StarCraft. Like, Nurture's had a phenomenal year. He's been so much fun to follow. Pretty much through all matchups as well. I guess the only one where sometimes he struggles a little bit is TvZ, but then at the same time he also showed us great things in TvZ. I guess I remember a couple of great games where it comes to Muda splits and, you know, parasitic bombs and stuff left and right, dodging those.
He's been a good player to follow.
He's got it all.
A lot of development from Nurture, I'd say, over the past few years. He seemed like more of a kind of like mental game player, where he would kind of have builds figured for certain players in specific matchups, but he's become so much more better rounded, I would say, over the course of the last year. But he doesn't have to rely on pulling a cheeky build that'll snipe you, like, you know, builds he would use against 4GG, I think, back to in DreamHack's prior.
I think out of all the foreigners currently, or even if you just look at all the players in the WCS region, if we think, you know, forward a couple of months, you know, the WCS global players are coming closer. I think a lot of fans will have their hopes on Nurture. I mean, of course, you have Snoot and you have Pold as well. Pold will always show up. Like, I'm not even worried about that. Even if Pold loses every single game since the moment he qualified until he plays in the round of 16 of the WCS global playoffs, I still have faith in Pold, because it's Pold, and like, never write him off. I think Hydra can definitely have a good showing, but his ZVP does worry me. But Nurture and Snoot, but mostly Nurture as a player, that's like, all right, you know, show me Nurture. I don't care who you're going up against in those global playoffs. I think as long as it's not Zest, I have a lot of faith in that young man.
All right, and we are back into the game. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in. Oof. Almost forgot where we were, Kev.
I remember a counter-attack with a couple of Zerglings and Banelings. The Spire has finished up, and we see 10 Mutalisk on the production tab. Taking a look at the work account, Nate, it's 42 SCVs against 65 drones for Serral. The only problem I see for Serral, okay, this is, well, actually somehow a couple of Lings managed to sneak into the mineral line and actually get on top of that tank as well. How on earth is this happening?
Yeah, causes some friendly fire, actually almost picking that siege tank up. Another 8 SCVs are killed, getting on top of some Marines and a Marauder in the natural expansion. So tremendous worker damage being taken at the same time. uThermal has a drop on the bottom side of the map, looking over, and that attack is hitting from the west banana hallway. Quite a few Marines here. He's going to snipe the fourth base. No cancel. Mutalisk running up. Don't fight the Marines with those.
That was not a fight that Serral wanted to take. There's still a couple of units on the left side over here as well. Good focus fire, but the Baneling count is just too high for now. So good job there by Serral pushing this back. These Marines are trading pretty well against the Muta so far.
I mean, getting any kills that quick is very nice. These Marines slip in from the right side, picking off one of the Queens and 2 drones so far. The Banelings are all stuck behind the Queens. They're holding them back, so they come. He gets 4 more drones before the Banelings do pick up the rest of his forces. 2-2 is going to finish up, so uThermal's Marines should be able to trade a lot better with the Lings, but that economy is still in tatters.
Cool to see drilling claws, by the way. I mean, a lot of people recently on Twitter I've seen like, oh god, I missed the Legacy, or I missed Heart of the Swarm, Terran versus Zerg. Well, Nate, this is giving me some flashbacks. I see Muda Ling Bane against Marine Marauder Widowmine with drilling claws.
It's definitely something that's been popping up a little bit. So many of the Zerg players relying on the Ling Queen to defend. They just naturally move into those melee upgrades, and the Spire is also a very good way to be safe against some of the other weird stuff that can happen, like those drops. He's got a Thor coming in to help back this up against the Mutalisks, of course. And most interesting things I want to keep my eyes on, we do not yet have a Hive on the way.
I don't think we even have an infestation pit, Nate.
Not 100% sure on that. These forces are going to come check it. Yeah, no infestation pit. He's going to catch the army on the south side here. These Marines can't fight. He's going to get a drop on the left side at the same time, pushed back by the Queens. Infestation pit has begun. The Mutas are on the run. They got the medevac, so now it's just Marines running for their lives. He's going to focus on a few Banelings. Some pretty nice micro to uThermal, making the most of the forces that he has. 3-3 is going to start, and you know, Roddy, you are giving me the flashbacks. He's going to have those upgrades done so much further ahead of the Zerg player.
Well, I think Serral is going to try to win this game, though, before 3-3 is done, or maybe just when it finishes up, and then he's going to put on a lot of pressure. I do like this. uThermal's never been a player that has a whole lot of missile turrets at home. There is one Tor out, by the way. I mean, Tor's against Mutalisk. Of course, I mean, shots can work. In this day and age, I'm a little bit more used to see the Liberator, but it's interesting to see these Widow Mines with Ridden Claws and a couple of Thors as well.
Yeah, you know, I have to say, one scenario where making Thors is definitely a good thing is if your opponent is using Mutas, they're always solid damage, but you want to keep building Medivacs instead of those Liberators, well, the Thor is going to give you a reasonable anchor against that Air Force with the sick range that it has.
I mean, still only 44 SCVs, Nate, for uThermal. I mean, I'm often a player that sometimes, or as a caster as well, I say, like, you know, the work count doesn't matter all that much because he's got all the upgrades and he's got all the infrastructure, but I think this is a little too early in the game to be dropped down to 44 workers. I would love to see uThermal try to do a better job and try to replace some of them.
Sandwiches this drop, picks up both medevacs, and you're completely right, Kev. The biggest issue here for uThermal is that while he has a powerful force, while he has great upgrades, if he loses this army, if he takes one bad engagement, he does not have the income to completely rebuild this force. I mean, Widow Mines are cheap, Marines are cheap, but at the same time, if he relies on trying to remax on that army, well, when the Hive finishes up, we all know Ultralisks are going to completely shut down Mass Marine. You need something else. You need Ghosts or Liberators or an insane amount of siege tanks, and all of those things are still going to be difficult to get if you don't have the money.
I do feel that this may actually be Serral's time to just go. There are a couple of Widow Mines
there's
still
the mines.
here.
Yeah, there's 3 Widow Mines. The Mutas do split over the SCVs, actually killing a few of the SCVs with the Widow Mine splash. So
I mean, Serral is pretty much maxed out. Hive is finishing up. I think this would be a great moment for Serral to really push the issue. 3-3 is going to finish up, but this is still a moment where I feel like he could very well get an awesome trade. He's at 134 army supply against the 102 of uThermal, and that 102 is also kind of scattered all over the place.
And he's going to grab another one of these siege tanks on the right by that third base.
Did he get both? I think the second tank may have died as well. No, barely survived.
Still barely kicking. Ultralisk Caverns on the way. He's going to get some damage on this wall as that Widow Mine blows up 15 of the Zerglings. Should still be able to break this down, but that gives uThermal enough time to reposition his forces and clean them up. He's trying to retake the north side. Those Lingbane are going to be pushed back.
I must say, Nate, I find this very, very fun to watch, especially as a Protoss player. Like, this is the TvZ that I've loved for so long.
This is the TvZ.
The Zerg, you know, just run all around with Lings, Banelings, trying to find an opening. Meanwhile, Mutalisk looking for openings while going up to Hive, of course, at the same time. But this is very different and so much more action-packed than the Roach Ravager we see very frequently.
This is the TvZ I'd like to see him play a lot more often, Kev. This is a really nice style I like coming out of both players. These Widow Mines are going to get caught by the Mutalisks, and even with that Drilling Claws, not able to get into a position to punish how close they are. But we talked about this. The Ghost Academy is on the way, but the Ultralisk Cavern is done. Chitinous Plating is coming. And once Chitinous Plating is done with that +3, there must be something other than Marines and Marauders to deal with this. It's going to be the Liberators, it's going to be the Ghosts, but the Mutas are going to have a big impact on that as well.
Yeah, so maybe this is the moment where uThermal can get an awesome trade, as he does have those 3-3 upgrades already, and there's no Adrenal Glands yet. 4 Ultralisk are on the way, Nate, but it always takes a while before they actually pop. And like you said, Kindness more than halfway down.
It is important to note that he has the +3 attack. So even with Kindness and the Ultras, without the +3 armor, the Marines and Marauders can trade against the Ultras pretty effectively if he kites.
Widow mines, yes, a couple of mines were left behind. A good
Gets
split
a
there.
lot of the lanes with them, but one of the siege tanks does get cleaned up at that base. These counterattacks are nice.
Yeah,
he's just buying time for the Ultras. He wants the +3, he wants the Kindness, and this Adrenal Glands is going to make his counterattacks so much more powerful.
I couldn't agree more. Some people may look at that like, oh, Serral just threw away a lot of Zerglings. That was absolutely worth it. Even if he killed nothing there, he pulled the units from uThermal back, which allows him to get these Ultralisk out, which will allow him to get Kindness plating, as that has just finished up.
And he finished another base in the bottom middle of the map as well. So he's going to continue to flourish that economy.
That was the greatest counterattack that has never killed, that it didn't kill a single thing that I've ever seen, Nate.
It was very effective. So we have the Ghosts coming in, and I love this. Broodlord transition already being prepared. The Greater Spire. Broodlings, of course, can cancel those snipes. Great drone pickoffs, actually, cleaning up that base completely. 14 workers. The Mutalisk coming in to fight here, but the Marines can trade pretty well against those as well. Does get the medevac, but needs to be extremely careful. This transition period here for Serral, is he committing too much to this tech? Needs to be extremely cautious. If those Ghosts get the snipes off on the Ultras, this could be game.
I mean, it's a pretty wild game, Nate. This is game 1 in this series. That's a very rough Terran army to engage into. I mean, it's not just a couple of Liberators there with their zones. It's also those mines that you still have to respect a little bit, especially when your bailing count is this high, Nate.
He's just going to try to rush in straight with those Ultralisks right into the army. A great fungal on the left side holds the army together, and the Ultras get on top. The Ghosts can't snipe under the fungal cover, so he's going to be completely chased down. The entire army shreked as these Ultras retreat with a little bit of health for those transfuses, and the Mutas come up trying to get the Liberators, but the Marine reinforcements will defend those. The Queens move a bit slow, but he gets the transfuses, and he needs to continue to push this army back.
Yep, a couple of Ghosts misrallied there. They will get picked off as well. Whoa, those Medefacts were so low on HP, by the way, and they were carrying a lot of units.
Yeah, it's just getting a big drop here would be extremely crucial, but it just hurts so much.
Those were the links that actually were found before already. Very well done there by Serral.
It hurts so much to get hit by that fungal growth. The Ghosts are incredibly powerful, but the fungal growth will completely cancel any snipes that they try to use against the Ultras. So if you get the fungal, always take the fight. They can't use those abilities. They can't kite you even without creep, and that gave so much. And then the Baneling harass, as you said, is going to come in. A couple more SCVs will die.
That's cute. Hey, wow, he actually lost the hatchery. That's a massive pickup, especially because Serral actually saw those two medevacs. Like, I'm sure he saw it. He had units there, so he should have seen them fly to the south side of the map. Meanwhile, uThermal is on the
very nice counterattacks from uThermal, buying himself as much time as he possibly can. The Corruptors are coming out, though. That Greater Spire should be ready. Will he have the economy? Will he have the setup that he needs to transition and deal with Broodlords? It cancels the base again. That Ultra is there, but can't be everywhere at once.
He just looked at it, Nate. He didn't even try. That was me and Jim in high school. I looked at the other kids doing exercise and I was like, yeah, good job, man. Meanwhile, that hatch fell. I mean, that's. I mean, it's very important for Serral that he starts mining up this base again, because obviously the first 3 bases that he's had are pretty much mined out. So he still has that 4th, which he did take very late. But having that 5th makes his life so much easier. I love how uThermal is making the battlefield as large as it is. He's just attacking everywhere, but not close to each other. You know, he makes it so hard for Serral to cover all these positions.
And you mentioned this earlier with the Ling attack that bought time for the Chitinous and the Adrenal Glands, and these drops are buying him time to continue to push that economy out. Since it's just so hard to deal with because he's lost most of the Mutalisk count, right? Like going into Corruptors for Broodlords sound great, but Corruptors are not fast at all, and enough Marauders with these drops, and that Ultralisk, you know, one Ultra can be strong against Marines, but you bring this many Marauders to the party and you can knock that base down again.
Yep, I mean, there are a lot of Corruptors here, but none of them have morphed into Broodlords just yet. And I think if Serral just keeps on defending like this, he's playing straight into uThermal's hands. I understand that he really wants to keep this 5th base alive, which is so important that he actually lets it finish up, and it's not going to die because he got a couple of Queens coming in, and they will drop those transfusions. Hitting
it with the transfuse is very important. These Marauders in the bottom side are going to get cleaned up. The guys on the high ground have really been putting in some overtime, but can't quite finish off the hatchery from that position.
I mean, I think it is. Whoa, the Marauder is doing some serious work.
Guys, okay, there's another transfuse. Ling counterattack is going to hit the northwest base, picking off these fresh mules and these SCVs extremely quickly.
Wow. Before you look, I mean, these are 3-3 Zerglings with adrenal glands. I think we've said this many times. But
very close game. The ghost count has climbed very high. Extremely important, as you mentioned earlier, Kev. The Corruptors on the map, no Broodlords yet. So the Marines and Marauders can continue to dance around against these Ultralists on the low ground. He's going to pick off this hatchery on the west side as well. The Lings are still, I think, killing that command center in the top left, though.
I think this is one of these moments where you really want to start going across the map as Serral, and you want to apply some serious pressure. He's making 4 more Corruptors. I would say keep those Corruptors at home with a couple of Lings to defend against any sort of drop, but start morphing Broodlords on the other side of the map. I mean, Frost, yes, it is a big map, but if you put Broodlords in a good position, it's still a relatively small map. I spoke with Snoot about it. I was like, hey, you know, don't you think that some of these Ultras are better than straight up Broodlords? He's like, nah. He's like, Frost, even though it looks big, he's like, it's not really all that big, and it's really hard to avoid the Broodlords if you start applying pressure. And I can see that now, but Serral is not doing that.
Now, the thing is, this army also benefits a lot from creep spread because you have not only just obviously Ultralisks to get that speed boost, but the queens that support them and make them so good can't really follow him around because he continues to kill the creep every time he takes one of these fights. And we have another scan there as this force on the right side will be pushed back. Serral trying to defend that expansion, taking another one in the southeast corner. Serral's just desperate to get a little bit of cash money flowing here so he can build the army that he feels he needs to take this game.
I mean, he's still on 50 workers. He's got a little bit of money in the bank. It just seems like his plan for now is going to be nothing but defend. These 2 Medivacs are very injured, by the way. So these Corruptors, even the Widow Mines on friendly fire takes out one of these Medivacs.
Feels bad, man. So he's going to move this army up towards the north tower. More Liberators coming out. I mean, as the Ghost Liberator count climbs, those are 2 most important units for this late game, but you just have to be careful. You know, those Ghosts do not split as fast as Marines. If you get hit by the Banelings or hit by the Fungal, you can cancel the snipes. You do not want to take a big battle like that. And in this kind of weird economy situation, I can see Burrow being pretty cool. I mean, some cheeky Burrowed Banelings for sure can do a lot of damage against armies like this.
The Trader Mine was actually still there, and this time did some real damage, Nate, on these Corruptors. It's so interesting to see Serral going to Corruptors this quickly. We see a Nidus network being morphed now as well. I mean, he does have these very well upgraded links, so I can get behind this. I can see this do some serious work.
You get a changeling inside of the main base, and all of a sudden you can rip those barracks apart very quickly if you can catch the Terran out on the map. We have Banelings being made as Burrow gets closer to completing, so things are going to get interesting here, Kev. Very scrappy first game.
I mean, because uThermal has lost so many SCVs throughout the entirety of this game. His army is massive. We're currently looking at 155 army supply, or actually almost 160 of uThermal. That is ridiculous, Nate. I mean, it's not supposed to be that big.
Now he's going to come up here and try to take this fight. The Corruptors take out the Liberators. The Ghosts get a good couple of snipes off, but some of them are caught on that choke point on the south side. Most of the Ghosts actually getting killed in that spot. There's still a few left with enough energy for more snipes, but gonna try to trade against these Ultras. Serral needs to be very careful to stay by his queens. They have the energy, and well, uThermal GG's out.
Yeah, I mean, the Liberators were just not protecting the rest of the army, Nate. They were way too far in advance. Serral just kind of jumped on that opportunity immediately, and what a game by this Finnish Zerg. It's a Serral that I haven't seen in a while, but I'm so happy to see him return. That was really good. Of course, yes, he did get a little fortunate, it being cross-map Frost and all, which suits his playstyle so well and is just good for his race in general, but I think he played very good there, Nate.
Yeah, interesting smile there from uThermal as we got a little bit of a look at him at the end of that game. Probably realized it's like, yep, kind of got caught there. You know, that's the thing. You're moving around with that army. You need the Widow Mines to be sieged. You want to spread them out as much as you can.
Yeah, that's a tricky army to
and obviously
control.
You want to be able to get your Liberators set up in advance because, yeah, like you said, it's a bit of a tricky scenario. You know, the Ultras catch you and your Liberators aren't sieged. It takes about 3 seconds real time for them to get into a position where they can actually fire, and if you are caught off guard, that's what happens.
And I mean, these Liberators, they were just not doing much, Nate. Like, all those liberation zones, like, obviously uThermal was trying to apply some pressure on the 5th base. That's why he was setting up the Liberators there, because he wanted to move the rest of the army into those liberation zones. But Serral was telling you, like, oh, cool, you know, this is like the entire army, let's go for it. I think this is one of the earlier fights in the game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you see he gets a big fungal on all the Ghosts that were in the upper center of that army.
And he brings the Ultras back and then he transfuses all of them. This was really well done.
Look
at how low HP these Ultras were. This time again, the Liberators a little bit out of position. It's like, hey, 3 red Ultras? Nope, 3 green Ultras.
Extremely intelligent positioning and choosing when to pull that back. He recognizes, I don't need to kill the last 20 supply of your army. I just need to keep, you know, these 4 or 5 Ultralisks in good health, bring them back for the transfuses and let them fight later on. Considering how scrappy this game was, considering how much pressure economically was put on Serral, that could have been the game-winning play for him.
Yeah, and I must say that it was a brilliant move by Serral in the end to just do nothing but defend. You know, I really thought there were maybe openings for him to apply some pressure with Broodlords, but he's like, nah, you know, uThermal's on 4 bases. I shot down the economy on the 5th base at once. If I have to do it again, I guess he could do it anyway. He's like, I'm just going to let him attack into me over and over again until he runs out of money, because I think my army on creep is invincible. And Nate, he was right, you know, like he was able to just defend over and over again. I definitely think that uThermal could have got a much better fight there in the end of the game, because he was obviously not ready for that big fight.
Terran needs more time to prepare for these fights, simply put. Like the way that you have to position, you want your liberator zones to be spread out, but you want to be able to fight underneath them. You don't want the liberator zones in front of your army. You want them on your army, so that when you start to micro and retreat as those units push into you, that's when they start taking heat from the liberators. Because if the liberators are as front up as they were, the corruptors can pick them off before any of your bio is even underneath them. So they end up being pretty much dead supply in the air. The liberators need to be pre-sieged. And like you said, you getting caught off guard. It's just a scenario where, as the Zerg player, you realize what's going on, and then you just hit the pedal to the metal.
Exactly.
You drop that fungal, and you go ham.
It's super important not to be indecisive there. Be like, maybe this is a good fight. No, like you just gotta go for it.
Then the liberators siege up, and you're like, oh my god, I lost half my army. Do I? Well, now you have no choice. But we are loaded in to Apotheosis. The Reaper map here for this man, who does have workers going to the other side of the map. He's the Red Terran. He's down 0-1. He's uThermal.
I mean, if we are this sure that this man is going to build a couple of barracks on the other side of the map, this man has to be pretty sure about it as well. He was great in the beginning of 2016. It's been slow ever since, but he looked awesome in game 1. Can he continue? It is My Insanity's Serral. I mean, he knows, Nate. He must know that this is coming. This cannot come as a surprise. He
has to consider it, but think about it.
No, not consider it. Like, he's done... uThermal has done this the last 4 times I've seen him play on this map. And we also know that if this is a map that you just play chill and straight up, that is an extremely good map for Zerg, because, I mean, we saw Marino play perhaps the best StarCraft of his career against Nurture on this map, and it wasn't enough, you know? Like,
that's true.
So this is not a map where you comfortably want to go command center first and macro your way out of it.
I think one of the best ways, one of the best things about this map for this sort of cheese is just the fact that you can build it so close to their main base, but it takes so long for a worker to go all the way around, past where the gold base is, and come down here. Whereas once those Reapers pop, they're going straight up the cliff. Serral sees the barracks. You should immediately recognize what's coming, and it's time to see if he can out-micro uThermal, something that he has shown is very difficult to do.
I've seen multiple Zergs having different approaches to defending this. Some of them just try to defend it with Queens and Lynx, some of them try to defend it with Roaches, and some of them actually go Roaches and then into Ravages. And uThermal said in one of his post-game interviews, I think it was Violet who tried to morph Roaches into Ravages on Galactic Process during the Into Extreme Masters, where he's like, yeah, I actually think that's one of the best ways to deal with it, because obviously Ravages got way more range than Roaches, which makes it a lot harder for Reapers to be as effective as they can be.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people don't really take into consideration all that much. The range of the Reaper versus the Roach is actually extremely favorable for Reaper fights because of the way the health regeneration works. And the first Reaper is going to come up. We have that bunker to cut off the main from the natural expansion. The first drone almost getting picked off there. And there we go. And that's one of those things that really is very player dependent. The ability to just get those precise right clicks straight onto the weakest Ling, the weakest drone, and rallying that up, because this is such a momentum-based attack where he just slowly increases that Reaper count over the economy that can be built to produce enough links to actually stop you.
Finally, the Queen is out. Is the Queen able to pick up one Reaper? Nope, it is not. The Queen actually wasting some damage there on the STV, which allows these Reapers to put some serious pressure on this Queen already. I mean, the micro so far by uThermal is phenomenal. Has not lost a Reaper yet and has killed a pretty decent amount of units.
Yep, the first few Roaches are on the way as Ling speed gets closer and closer to finishing, but that Queen is dead.
Wow.
And without speed, these Lings can't do anything against uThermal's Reapers. He's going to clean them all up. The grenades are hitting the drones, sending them into the sky, and the kiting begins. GG taps out. uThermal ties the series 1-1.
Why does this guy even ever expand, Nate, if you can just do this all over again? I mean, I understand it has a lot to do with the map, but it is insane how much success uThermal's had with proxy Reapers over the last few weeks in Legacy of the Void. It's ridiculous.
That just, I don't know how excusable that is on the part of Serral. He's done this so much on this map, then he scouts it, and the thing about Roaches is when you go for them that fast too, before you get the Queen count up.
Let's go back, Nate. Sorry, before I let you continue, let's go back. The 7, like hatch first, into a gas, and 17 pool. Too late?
I think if you can anticipate that this is happening, like, you should try to preempt it. Like, faster Ling speed buys you a lot more time. But I mean, I don't play Zerg, but whenever I've done this, when I see uThermal do it, the biggest thing that always happens is you lose the first queen. He goes for the roaches so much faster. He doesn't have another queen that comes up from the natural expansion because that bunker's kind of cutting the base off. Like, you need that base to buy yourself a little bit of time to build forces. But rushing straight up to roaches, although the Ravagers can be good in theory, you also don't have the economy. Like, you just have so low unit numbers that the Reaper count can just scale and destroy it anyway. Because you just do what uThermal does, and he does this differently than some other Terrans where you just, spam out the grenades. They just throw one grenade at a time, and when the roach is in the air, wobbling its little fingers and toes, it cannot shoot. So you just shoot it nonstop.
I mean,
grenade after grenade.
And it's so hard as well to keep your drones safe, because the moment you send the drones away from the Reaper, they clump up. And the moment they clump up, that's where uThermal throws grenades, and then suddenly you see 6, 7 drones go through the air. And if he does that twice or 3 times, then you lose 5, 6 drones at once. I mean, every single time I see uThermal do it on this map, it is close to a flawless victory. I saw it against Montreal. I saw it at the Into Extreme Masters multiple times as well. I mean, I don't know how he does this, but he just makes it look
And look at
easy.
it this way. Serral decided at the start of that game when he saw the barracks that he wanted to use roaches against it. With how fast he was trying to get the roaches out, like, it's just hard to do that because look, he has like Ling speed on the way this whole entire time. Like, as he starts the roaches, he's losing everything else. No more queens in production. He just rushes up to these roaches that I really don't think can do too much until you're able to get like 5 or 6 out and then start transforming them. Like, they're not going to give you anything, and he could have spent the resources that went into Ling speed this early on somewhere else if he wasn't planning on using Lings as the primary form of defense. Like, it's extremely tricky. I'm not going to say it's an easy build for Zerg to hold off, especially on this map in particular, but uThermal is also extraordinarily good at microing in these situations. And honestly, he makes his build look disgusting.
Yep, I mean, he said it himself as well. He's like, actually, I personally think it's a little bit imbalanced. He's like, if you do it right, then you're really not supposed to lose a whole lot with this build. This is another map where we've seen him done it on a couple of times. I don't think we're necessarily going to see it again, but it is always possible, Nate.
That's right. We are here on Galactic Process, and the man with the Reapers in the bottom left, he is uThermal, Titan up 1-1.
Look at all that love for this Reaper madness, Nate. A lot of Terran players out there in the audience here in Montreal.
I see it enough in TvT. It's frustrating, but it is fun to watch. His opponent in the top right, the blue Zerg player from My Insanity, he is Serral.
You know, Nate, whenever I see games like this, like I see a series like this unfold, I always think back of the days where I used to play and like be competitive. And I remember those times where you fight so incredibly hard in game 1. You know, you play a very long, and because of the small break we had in the game as well, it was even longer. Like, it felt almost like an entire 35-minute map in total, you know, that Frost took. Finally, you secure yourself a 1-0 edge and you feel like you really gave it your all. And then map number 2 starts, and before you know it, it's over and it's all even. And I think it's really hard to get over that hurdle as a player, where it's just like, man, this is ridiculous, you know. I played a phenomenal game 1. I got all the way up to Hive. I got 3-3 upgrades, and I played, you know, the best StarCraft I could possibly play. And then in game number 2, you see a bunker go up and you lose in 3 minutes. I think this can be very, very frustrating as a player.
I think uThermal has decided that defense in that last game was so poor that this is the best move for him to make, is to just do it again and not proxy it so that he doesn't have as much time to think about how he's going to react to this. uThermal is just going to go after this again. Galactic Process is actually another phenomenal map for this strategy because you don't only have that giant cliff that leads into the main base, but you can also jump down from this area to the low ground by where that 4th is, where the rocks are. So there's a lot of space to work with. If they try to get you on both sides, you can jump down, much like Orbital Shipyard. Not quite as overpowered as on Orbital Shipyard, but still very strong.
Yeah, actually, uThermal mentioned this as well, that he prefers to keep the barracks at home on Galactic Process, just because he has to worry about counterattacks otherwise, and he feels that, you know, this map is short enough that it doesn't delay his attack by all that much. Obviously, you cannot build 3 barracks in your main base and apotheosis, because it will take 2 years before the Reapers make their way across the map, but that's not the case over here. So uThermal is just going to do it all again, and I'm not all that surprised, Nate.
All comes down to the micro. I mean, he's shown that he can do it as long as he doesn't throw any of these units away. He turned one of the drones that was about to die into it. I mean, It can kind of help, but you'd be surprised how fast those things die when you have 7 Reapers throwing grenades at them.
I'm not surprised. I've seen it now.
They're not that strong, actually, in a weird sort of way. But these Queens are going to come down. This is really what I feel you need, is the Queens provide you that buffer while you get Ling speed, and then you try to get the surround before there's too many Reapers on the map to fight against this.
A much faster command set to follow up. This time he does get...
He killed the Spine right as it started morphing, so that's lost money, quite a bit of resources down the drain. And he throws the grenades, you can kill the larva with them as well, so that limits just the production, you know? That's like taking away your barracks cycles.
uThermal is already ahead in workers, Nate. The command center is on their way as well. Obviously, for now, it's going to be nothing but Zerglings and Queenlings on the production Zerglings and Queens, excuse me, on the production tab for Serral, because he needs an answer to deal with all these Reapers, but this is not going Serral's way so far.
I mean, the biggest thing is you have to recognize the Terran generally doesn't have much of a follow-up, but the command center at the natural is going to finish soon for uThermal. He is prepared to transition out of this, and the Overlord sees that, so he knows if he overcommits too much, things are going to get extremely dicey. He has to try and get drones. He has to keep building the Queens. Those are the units that'll have the most utility. If he masses Lings right now, that just means he's not rebuilding his economy.
And I mean, even just massing Lings can be so incredibly risky. A couple of grenades, and it can be all over, and then all that larva was super wasted.
Yep,
Serral knows it as well.
This is very dangerous. At the same time, if you get enough of a surround by where these Queens are, the Reapers can help kill themselves if they throw grenades on top of them. So you have to be very decisive as a Terran, poking in here, dealing damage to the Queens, and trying to cycle the weakened Reapers into the back of your line.
A Roach Warren on the production tab, that gives me the idea that perhaps we're going to see some Roach Revenger action over here. On tier 1, I don't think he wants to tech up anytime soon, because I wonder why he would drop the Roach Warren now.
The weird thing is maybe he's seen this Reaper count, he's scared that he's going to keep building them, like just go in like full NA, just insane amount of Reapers, but that's not the case here. We already have the Starport actually on the way, Stim close to halfway done, so this follow-up from Serral, or from uThermal, is going to be extremely difficult because, as you pointed out, there's really no tech follow-up. There's no third base. Like, I feel like uThermal's already done what he needs to do. This kind of reminds me of what happens to Zerg when you try to defend these mega adept builds, because you just invest so much into defending it that you have no real follow-up for what comes next.
And I mean, you still got to respect all these Reapers as well. You can't just ignore them.
One of these Marines ran out here as well. He's throwing grenades onto the eggs. There's a Marine running towards the third base. Just got cleaned up by those Lings.
A couple of Reapers are very low on HP, by the way. This might be the very first moment. I mean, how many Reapers have died so far in this game? Not a single one.
Easy mode.
uThermal's ridiculous.
Reapers are good units, Kev. Reapers are extremely good. So he's going to try to break down these rocks, open up more paths, kills the creep tumor. He's like, oh, third base. Nope. Shuts that down. He's going to start trading against these Lings. He's going to jump up into the main base. He can throw grenades on the ramp and deny the reinforcements from coming in here. I love this. Just one grenade at a time, just saying, dare you. I dare you to come up here. Now he's going to jump back down. He's going to try to escape, throwing the grenades to cover his path, hitting so many of these Zerglings and cleaning up this force. That third base could be completely forfeit right now. If he cleans up just a few more of these Zerglings, the Queens are going to take a long time to reposition.
Yeah, okay. I think the Reapers are kind of stuck now, though, right? They obviously can't escape via the left side. So the Queens should kind of split up. A couple of Queens should go to the right side, because now the Reapers can go potentially back into the main. There are a couple of Roaches waiting for them over there, though, but still, the amount of time that uThermal is buying for himself, he's up 6-7
Stim
workers.
is done. Medevacs are coming out. Marines are coming out. 5 at a time. And most of the Lings have been cleaned up. A lot of the Roaches are injured. So uThermal's follow-up, like this is where you got a nice little scrappy fight at the start, but he has beaten, battered, and bruised him, and he's just going to be going for the sucker punch now to finish this.
And how do you defend against like Medevacs with Stim Marines that are going to attack all 3 bases at once, and you just have Lings and Queens? That is so incredibly difficult. I mean,
and these Roaches, even these Roaches trying to defend, like kills one super easily because they're all incredibly weak from the first fight. He's going to take his third command center. Things I like for Serral, he is finally moving his way to his lair. He's got his 1-1 started before uThermal has his engineering base even beginning. But as the medevac count increases, like you said, there's more drops hit and more locations. It's going to be very tough.
These units are faster, more mobile, and have higher DPS. It's really hard to cover all 3 bases now. It is doable for Serral, but it's going to be very, very tricky. The Mega Roach will survive for now. He does still have those spine crawlers to fall back on, so that's nice. So far, Serral is doing a phenomenal job in not taking too much damage of these very fast Terran units.
Yep, but as that pressure continues to mount, the Marines are going to come in once again, dropping into the main base, trying to pull some of these forces up north side. And he has 2 medevacs worth of Marines, it looks like, on the bottom side outside of the natural. So drones are going to start to die in the main base. He sees the lair timing. He knows that it's finished now. And these Marines are going to come up. Where's the support to help these Queens?
I mean, it's probably on the way. One queen does get micro a little bit. The second queen taking a lot of damage.
As soon as these queens are dead, he can just lift up and drop for days, back and forth, non-stop. Another medevac of Marines making its way across. Third command center is finished for uThermal. He's got his 1-1 on the way, and now with combat shields finishing, he can trade much more efficiently against roaches.
I mean, the work account still looks good for Serral, as he did finally overtake uThermal pretty much since the first time since minute 3 in this game. But like you said, it's going to be so hard now, especially without queens, to apply any sort of pressure on these medevacs. They can just fly around for days, and well, I mean, he does have 2 queens over here.
Serral's actually done a pretty sick job of recovering.
All things considered,
getting those upgrades during that is huge, because now, until 1-1 is done for uThermal, he's going to have an extremely difficult time getting any work against these lings. I mean, he's got his armory started at the perfect timing, but look at that. Is that straight to Infestation Pit? He knows what he needs to take this game, and he's rushing for it.
I find it phenomenal how little damage Serral has taken, other than losing those 2 or 3 queens there against all these medevacs that are so fast, against the Marines that have so much DPS with their stim, that he didn't lose more while just defending like this with even minimal vision. He doesn't even have all that much vision around the map. I find pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, uThermal's just trying to hit with all these drops, but it is so rough. And those roaches and those ravagers with their base armor of 1, like having the upgrade advantage means so much more than just with lings against Marines in these head-to-head fights. And it's going to pick up that medevac with the bio. Great shot by Serral. Drop's going to get into the natural though, gets 6 drones, pulls back. And the siege tank transition has begun as well. So uThermal setting himself up with a Marine tank composition. Armory is ready, so he can start 2-2 as soon as he wants. Drop does get killed in the 3rd base, but grabs a few drones before it goes away. And also keep in mind, I guess one good positive side of this is he has completely denied any and all creep spread outside of that base.
Yeah, there's no bailing nest yet, so I guess he's just going to rely on roaches and ravagers for a little while longer as we see more roaches on the production tab. I mean, against the sort of tank push, I think this time it's likely wild and not a good opening over here by uThermal.
A lot of drones getting picked up. He's going to come up here. He's going to try to pick off these queens, at the very least burning out their energy, and both of those queens are actually supposed to drop a heaping load of creep tumors, and they will not be able to do that. Now, of course, these rocks were never broken down because the drops kept hitting from this side, so he wants to take a base there. Well, good luck getting that drone out there without being seen, buddy.
Interesting position to take your fort, not the fort that I see people take very often on this map. It would be very hard to obviously take it on the south side of his natural, something that Protoss players like to do sometimes. So to see it there, I guess makes sense, but he needs to take care of those rocks, otherwise he can never keep it alive. I mean, he might actually just lose it straight up here. I mean, he's got no units inside.
This is way too far. None of his units can make it over here in time to defend.
uThermal was even surprised, I think, to find that base
he's using his bile to kill the rocks. It's like, okay, well, you can do that, man, but now your natural is extremely exposed. Important things to note, infestors are here, so that they can contribute pretty heavily to this. If a big fungal comes in, Drop's going to hit the right side. He gets a feel for this army as he drops the siege tanks just on the bottom side of that ramp. More queens getting focused down. The natural is in jeopardy. There are the infestors.
Fungal.
Where's the energy for the fungals? There's the first one. It's going to hit just on the left side of these Marines. The Ravagers are able to start shooting, but the bile's going to be dodged by the tanks. Medevacs are going to save those expensive units, and more drones getting killed in the 3rd at the same time.
Yeah, excellent pickups there by uThermal, not losing his tanks, and of course still being active with this drop as well. This medevac has been flying around on 20 HP for so long, but it's been such a nuisance. I would throw a fungal neck.
Insane harass that's come out of uThermal, but what we're seeing is Serral just does not stop. His hive is close to finishing, and that means we're going to see that Ultralisk Cavern once again.
That medevac has been on fire for like the last 30 minutes, but he just keeps sending it back. It's like Top Gun in there, man. He's like, nope, we can get another cancel on this hatch, man. Just keep it around.
Just a bunch of holes in the side. Just gives a better view, really.
It's like, it's just beautiful animation here. A little bit of smoke out of the engines, nothing to worry about. Just keep on going, baby.
Working as planned. So 2-2 is finishing up. Now uThermal should help him trade quite a bit better. He's only got 1 tank in the front to bait out these shots. Of course, those infestors are the big juicy targets as the hive is ready. Overlord speed is on the way. More roaches coming out now. And we see one of those infestors get very low. There's another drop on that main map. Flaming medevac inside. A couple of these roaches are going to be killed. The Marines have enough firepower to take him out now with those upgrades. The roaches and the Ravagers are going to come back up towards the main to try and stop this. Keep in mind that 4th base is on the way as well. Over halfway. This medevac will not be able to shut it down. And the Ultralisk Cavern is halfway done.
Pretty bizarre that Serral has just made it this far, being under so much pressure.
This game has been one non-stop fight, Kev. Someone's like, when was the battle in game 3 between Serral and uThermal? The whole game was the battle.
And there's always this guy on Team Liquid trying to write like key points. He's like, well, uThermal started attacking at minute 3, and people are like, hey, it's minute 14, what happened? Well, he's still attacking, you know, nothing has changed.
It never really stopped, you know. He threw away the Reapers when the bio came out because he wanted to stand and spread those out. And it's been pretty sick. I mean, this siege tank position, let's keep in mind, if he ever breaks out, counterattacking will still take a long time because there is no creep. And the siege tank count is pretty huge. The Ultras are not here to break this contain. A beautiful fungal with those biles on top of the medevacs, but there's still so much behind this.
Beautiful patience so far by Serral. I mean, he's just not taking that really bad fight that uThermal obviously wants him to take. Maybe this time he does get baited into it. Like you mentioned, Nate, there's so many tanks behind it.
Gets
good combination again, though.
2 more than medevacs, but there are so many siege tanks in this army, and the drop's going towards the northwest expansion. There's only 3 drones mining there, Roddy.
But all he needs is just a couple of ultras, Nate. I mean, he's got 2 on the way. Kindness plating is halfway done.
I think with this many siege tanks, a couple of ultras may not be enough. Like, this is a scenario where he also needs the +3 armor as well to try to get the advantage. Like, I don't think he can afford enough.
I think you will regret those words, Nate, once you see these ultras go to town. And you'll be like, yep,
versus just Marines, my inner Terran wants me to tell you that you're completely right. But if you have 7 or 8 tanks, I actually have seen some miracles happen.
Let's see. I mean, Kindness is about to finish up. Obviously, this hatchery has been taking quite a bit of a beating. It's 12 seconds remaining. There are 3 ultras on the production tab now. I know 1 is about to pop very quickly. The other 2, that's going to take a while. I mean, he might try to get very ballsy with 1 and just try to transfuse it over and over again, but he doesn't have that much energy on these queens anymore.
All right, well, he's going to try to break the ramp now that that chitinous plating is done. This is a position he should be able to break, but you see the Ultra up front eating so much transfuse, but there is enough here to clean up that front line. The tanks are still shelling away. Infested Terrans thrown out, and as you said, one of those Ultralisks caught in the back. uThermal, Marine, Medevac, microing that siege tank back, and he's going to clean up the majority of the army here for Serral, dominating this force. The Ultras are going to come down once again. These 2 bad boys by themselves, but the tanks are still alive, saved, and ready for the next fight. Liberators on the way.
The action does not stop between these 2. I mean, this is a great show so far between uThermal and Serral, and I think the only winners here we have are Osnate. I have no idea who's going to take this. Obviously, uThermal has options to be more aggressive, and there is a little bit of map vision lacking for Serral. Even though he's done whatever he could to potentially spread creep, but I mean, this has been so much happening. He does know about this fort base, but it's going to be very hard to keep his own fort base alive, and obviously it's hard to do a whole lot of counterattacks against planetary fortresses.
Yep, and one of the tougher parts about this, of course, the positioning is going to be very important, but that lack of creep spread is something that he basically needs to start now. Does get a great Ling run by into this expansion on the northwest side. 6 SCVs picked out, forcing the army to run back to deal with this. And uThermal, he's still got his drops around, but you know what? This army definitely can handle the drops now. You're not going to fight the Ultras head-to-head with these small bio clumps.
I mean, that 1 Ling already spotted this medevac. There was a Ling at the Zelnaga Watchtower, and then a couple of other Lings saw it as well. So we've got 2 Ultras here. That should be enough to keep Serral safe. It's important for Serral that he doesn't lose too many more drones. He's at 58, but obviously he doesn't have orbital command. Meanwhile, these queens are getting exposed, Nate, and a couple of them will fall immediately. Well done.
Good pick off so far. Look, that steps a few Marauders forward, snipes one of the infestors and pulls back. Not using all of his drop. He could have lost the whole drop for that, but good control from uThermal so far. And supply-wise, man, still kicking.
Serral's got a lot of gas. He's going to throw down a Baneling Nest now. He, of course, could make a few more infestors.
When you have chitinous plating before Baneling Nest, just Zerg things.
Adrenal Glance is about to finish up. I mean, this Ultra is a little indecisive. It's on patrol. I mean, that Ultra is super drunk, Nate. It was just running left and right.
Maybe it can't actually fit into that space. 12 drones getting picked off, though. The economy.
Look at this Ultra.
It's got the Baneling Nest. It's blocking the Ultra. Move that Baneling Nest.
This is the most clumsy Ultra that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that Ultralist, man. I don't know. At this point, you know, do you blame the game or do you blame the Ultra, right?
I'd blame that Ultra in particular.
This guy. This guy right here, man.
He's like, man, I've never asked for swords this big. I just wanted to be a Zergling, man. Why did put me in this big body?
Well, the drop's going to hit again. He's like, all right, I'll take the long way around. Fine. Fine, damn, it'll go all the way. And this drop is, I mean, you should just pick it up and move it away. But uThermal is also microing a large army outside the natural. He's going to siege these Liberators. There's quite a few Ultralisks, but not a tremendous amount of anti-air. The Biles are going to snap up one of the Liberators, but he can try to retreat to the side, needs to avoid getting fungled. One big one's going to hit this army. The Ultras begin to chew through. 2 of the Ultralisks very low. 2 of them are going to get picked off, but this attack has been routed.
Serral is playing so good. There were so many moments where he could have died, but just great job there, avoiding those Liberators as well, taking out that one Liberator that would have made it so difficult. Meanwhile, uThermal is just expanding like a madman left and right. I mean, he was already on 5 bases. Now he's going to take his 6th base, which is going to be the goal. Probably going to morph that one into a planetary, obviously.
So many queens. as well, pushing through that middle area on that right ramp. I think we just got a glimpse of it as uThermal does plant down on this gold. And
I really like the approach of uThermal though, by the way, Nate, because since Serral is playing a rather passive style of Zerg and he's just defending and he's like trying to get up to this invincible army, uThermal's like, well, fine, if all you want to do is defend, I'm going to expand and I'm going to go up to 6 bases while you're still on 4.
Oh, could have focused that hatchery down. He pitch positions the Liberator here to defend this command center against the Ultralisks, and he's just trying to go all over this map at the same time. I love this. He completely cuts this area off with the Liberators. That Ultralisk getting wrecked by the Conquered Cannons.
Well, I mean, this is going to be very hard. Even if he cleans up these bio units, it's still going to be in a kind of an awful fight here. Okay, he does have a couple of Ravagers, forces these Liberators to disengage.
Very close there. Those Liberators ain't cheap. The Ultralisk count continues to rise. How many Ultralisks do we have on the map? That's a good question.
6.
It's like...
Or 8, sorry.
There's 8 Ultras. I think there's 2 more on the way. Quite a few. Very powerful army, and I mean, we still have some Marines trickling in because you have to deal with the Zerglings. They're so strong against the Marauders with how slow they attack, so you have to keep this mix of bio. And the Liberator count is what's crucial here. There's no Spire, no Corruptors. Just keep cranking out the Liberators. Do not stop.
And don't forget, Nate, 3-3 is about to finish up for uThermal. It's late, but it will finally finish up. A couple of links with the Adrenal Glands have an excellent counter, but at the same time, this again is a very awkward army to engage. He's just going to walk into these liberation zones.
Ooh, you know, he kills some of the Liberators with the biles, but he trades a lot of those Ultralisks and a lot of the health on them back. The Liberators shooting out the Queens now and actually cleaning up quite a few of them. Most of these Queens actually dying.
Pretty much all of them, except for one.
Not too shabby. Well, he almost killed his own Queen there with the bile. Finally, Pit finishes off that natural. It was very weak. We have 2 starports now producing Liberators at a time. I do not believe there's a fusion core, so Liberator range would be cash money, but it's not on the cards just yet.
That hatchery in the natural had seen some things, Nate. Like that natural has seen fighting since pretty much minute 2.5, and we're almost 20 minutes into this game now.
Yeah, this is the real can't stop, won't stop game, Kev. This has been full overdrive from the very beginning. Another Liberator siege up towards the northwest as that drop in the main base gets pushed back by a single Ultra. And here we go. The Infestors are in position. I mean, a good fungal. He could bile, but he doesn't want to push in with the Ultras. I mean, these Liberators are going to get a tremendous amount of damage. They immediately pick off the Infestors. A base gets sniped in the center. The spawning pool is going to get sniped by this big drop. The Ultralisk Cavern is also there. Everything is right there, but he comes in from the backside, cleans up the attack in the northwest. Maybe he's going to go to the gold, but all of his tech, all of his infrastructure is in jeopardy. He could get the infestation pit here too.
uThermal is everywhere at once. He's got enough units at home to defend as well, but he's going to drop in the main, a drop in the third. He took out the fort, and that's going to be it.
uThermal takes the lead in this series with a phenomenal 100% action-packed game. That was from the very beginning, from the 3 Rax Reaper into the medevac drops, into the tank attack, the contain, the siege, the everything.
It never
what a
stopped.
sick game.
Yeah, absolutely. A phenomenal game between these two. And even though Serral played great there, he does find himself in that position where, once again, Nate, he's 1 map away from being eliminated in the round of 32. He's playing great so far, but I mean, the Reapers of uThermal, I mean, it all starts with the Reapers. Of course, this was a phenomenal game in so many ways, and uThermal did 100,000 things right, but it started with that, I mean, you said it, like almost disgusting Reaper control by uThermal, where he just gets so much done, and he pushes the game in such a weird direction. I mean, uThermal sets himself up. I mean, we often say like he gives himself an alley-oop to finish off with a slam dunk. Now, this time the slam dunk wasn't exactly like an immediate finish slam dunk.
Right.
But these medevacs, the pressure into the tanks, the tank pressure into the crazy expanding into, I mean, everything. What a game.
I'd just like to briefly touch on that start of the game, like you mentioned. If we compare it to the game on Apotheosis, he went straight for the roaches. He didn't build extra queens and didn't really have a lot of lings. In this game, he had a much better setup. Obviously, it wasn't proxied outside of his base, so the Reapers didn't hit quite as fast, but he went heavier into the queen production. And the queens, of course, just the ability to stack the energy in the transfuses was super important. And I love this tank siege. Maybe he could have tried to approach this fight a little bit faster before the Ultras popped, but I will say that Serral did a phenomenal job of defending. This is what a lot of, I would say, playing Terran feels like. You're just trying to hit the Zerg as hard as you can the entire game. Then the Ultras come out and you usually die, but uThermal was able to recover from that position in the game.
I mean, good combination of fungo and corrosive bow over and over again, but I love the tank spread. I think that Serral maybe should have taken out a couple of these rocks a little bit sooner. I think it would have made his life easier. Even like the green debris, you know, between the third base and that lower fort. He left that one untouched for a very long time.
He tried to get some work done on some of them. I know he tried to get some work done on the rocks in the top side, like pretty early in that game so he could go around, but the drops also made that very difficult for him as, well, yeah, he had the third base up so late that it was kind of hard to get the queens in position over there as well.
Next map is going to be Frozen Temple. Of course, match point for uThermal. He keeps his dreams alive, and he's still in the race for those WCS global players at the end of the year, especially if he advances to the round of 16 here.
Yep, and this is such a threatening map for him, as we've seen that Reaper style can also be strong here, but here he is in the bottom right, leading this series 2-1 here. You're watching the World Championship Series. He is uThermal.
On the left top side of this map, we're looking at the Finnish Zerg player who has played a great series so far, but he needs to do even more if he wants to bring it to Game 5. It is Serral. Frozen Temple, Nate, obviously a good map for Reapers. Whoa. Is that?
That is the I'm not going to get Reaper cheese this game spawning pool.
Okay, I like it.
It's like I just want a faster queen to deal with the first Reaper. But that is, in my opinion, one of the things that makes uThermal so good. You have to be worried about this every single game. Even if you scout it like he did on Apotheosis, he got wrecked super hard. Even though it wasn't proxied on Galactic Process, it still got a lot of damage and forced an extreme response that was necessary to survive. In this game, what we could be seeing is there's still been a little bit of some early pokes that Zerg can do. Like, it's possible that when this pool finishes, he just goes straight to a Roach Warren and does one of those weird fast pokes that some Zergs have been doing because of how late the gas is. But I feel that he's just been mind gamed by these Reapers too hard, and the last thing he wants is to lose this series on another Reaper cheese.
Yeah, it's funny. uThermal doesn't do it that often on Frozen Temple. He didn't do it against Violet at the Intel Extreme Masters, and then when he got asked about it, I think he said that he's like, well, it could potentially be too predictable. And on Frozen Temple, it can be a little bit harder to deal with certain counterattacks as well. He's like, so I didn't want to do it and decided to just play normal. As he does kind of like this map. If it comes to straight up, I mean, we know how aggressive uThermal is. He's great in controlling as well.
Where's the Reaper going? This is super
This is
important.
old school, but
yeah, the Reaper's going around the side, and he was trying to put the Lings around the side so that when the Reaper showed up, he could cancel the natural. He just won the lottery on where he sent this Reaper, to be honest. Having your natural canceled early on is almost a death sentence in Terran versus Zerg, but he's able to completely shut that down. He's got the reactor follow-up coming. He's got the second barracks. This looks exactly like the same opener that we saw him go for on Frost. And to your point, Kev, I've actually talked to uThermal about this as someone else who likes to build a lot of Reapers. This map just doesn't have a lot of fallback places for you to go. Once you jump out of the main, there's really nowhere else to run against Lings. So it's one of the reasons why it's not as favored for Reaper all-ins as other maps.
Such a good start there by uThermal. uThermal knowing perhaps that he's getting the upper hand of the mind games, thinking that Serral could potentially go for an earlier pool, make a couple of Zerglings and try to get something funky done.
It's hard. It's actually really hard to overstate how incredibly sick that was that he ran into those 4 Lings.
If the Reaper goes through the middle of the map and makes his way across the map,
I think 90% of Terrans send the Reaper straight across, and then they have their natural cancel, and you're like, oh my god. And we've seen it even happen to Pult on the biggest stages as well. Like, it is something that is extremely frustrating to deal with, but a very nice thing that he's avoided. He's going straight into the Marine production, and Stim is on the way.
uThermal was a pretty sick individual lately when it comes to Terran versus Zerg. One Overlord is making his way into the main base of uThermal. He's going to try to see how far along is that tech truly, and he's going to see both barracks all the factory, and it should have a pretty good idea of when the first Metafacts will come out.
Yep, this Reaper's going to spot the third base. Very nice for him to know. He can put a little bit of pressure on this, but, you know, this isn't any sort of Reaper Hellion build, or obviously it's not a mass Reaper build, so canceling the third is pretty much out of the cards, but at least knowing this tells him, okay, well, it's not going to be some crazy weird 2-base build, and if it is, it's going to be lacking a little bit of punch since this investment in the third hatchery is going to eat up resources.
What do you think is Serral's game plan here? Like, do you think he's going to do the exact same thing as we saw on Frost?
Yeah, based on what we've seen so far, I think he's just playing ye old, get to ultras, and wreck the Terran army with those fungals, because that's pretty much how he got Frost, and that's almost how he won the last one.
So what do you think was the reasoning between the heavy Zergling, Baneling, Muda style that we saw on Frost, and now again dropping the Roach Warren over here on Frozen Temple, just like he did on Galactic Process? Why not stick to what was working for him?
I think on Galactic Process, because the bases are so much closer, kind of like Cloud Kingdom, the Roaches don't have to move as far, so it's easier to defend with them, whereas the third base is a little bit further out on Frost from where your main base is, so you don't want to have to run Roaches constantly between those two. That could be it.
I think this is a decent map as well for Zergling and Baneling counterattacks, though. I mean,
yes, definitely 100% agree there. Now we have that double medevac move out. The Ling immediately spots it. And what is he going to have? 7 roaches on the way. It could just be stylistic. Maybe he just prefers that on Frost because that is like the ultimate map for the counters.
He's making a lot of roaches, Nate. 10. I feel like that's a
11,
few more. Yeah, that's a few more than Zergs normally make in this phase in the game just to deal with this potential pressure. He's going to pick up this. Nope, he's not going to pick up the Reaper. I thought he was.
The threat of the Reaper is there. I mean, the Lings aren't here to help fight. So these Queens immediately getting focused down. 1 second, one gets killed. And then, you know, if that third Queen goes down, if they're able to continue to wrap up that damage, that's where we see, you know, the drops. They do not stop when that anti-air is gone.
I mean, Serral definitely not playing greedy. They're making 11 roaches. That's a lot. Just to defend against these first 2 medevacs that often contain anything between 13 and 16 Marines. But he did lose 2 Queens immediately, so maybe this is for the best.
Yeah. Third command center's on the way. Double engineering bay, double evolution chambers coming in, but this is a lot of Marines, and look at these tanks. This reminds me of the follow-up attacks that he was doing against players like Snoot in the Intel Extreme Maps, pretty much every Zerg. Yep. And I've seen guys like pulling this build quite heavily in tournaments such as Shoutcraft King. So
no Ravages
let's
yet,
see what he
right?
can get done against this. Those biles will be important. Of course, the Queen's extremely important for bullying those medevacs out of position.
The tanks do get dropped. Medevacs will give vision. First tanks connecting with a couple of these roaches here and there. I mean, the Ravager count is not extremely high now. He just has a single one, I believe. He does have a lot of Queens here. They're going to push this back. Obviously, uThermal is going to need vision here at all costs if he wants to do any sort of damage.
Needs to be extremely careful. If he moves up the ramp, the army should be able to just surround him and swallow him whole. But I mean, at this point, he's thinking about, okay, I can trade the Marines out, use the medevacs to save the tanks.
Good micro by Serral there. Very well done. You saw that a couple of good transfusions, also moving the Queen back to the back. And then also using hold position to make sure he wasn't walking in range of these siege tanks.
I was about to say that he didn't actually, with that scan that he used, he wasn't able to get the tumors that were putting the creep on his army. Now he does, but you talked about this. Great map for counterattacks. He's going to throw it, but he hasn't actually landed the third base yet, which does bother me a little bit. So it's like, okay, you'll see no third there yet, but he should have, I mean, he needs that third like now, like a minute ago.
I like the tank on the high ground. uThermal obviously knowing that this is a map where Serral could potentially run around with Lings over and over again. At least he will have some firepower. But even if this happens later on, then these tanks will splash over the SCVs a bit, so any sort of counterattack can be excellent. I mean, uThermal is a very aggressive player, which often means that his SCV count is not extremely high. So if you can pick off 8, 9, 10, 11 SCVs in this phase in a game, you know you're dropping him almost into the 30s of workers, which is just not high enough to contain or to keep up all the upgrading and throw down additional production facilities, etc.
And one thing I do like about this game that we're seeing, I think, for the first time in this series is uThermal is actually going to be ahead on this first set of upgrades. So his harass should not lose any of its potency as the 1-1 finishes up for both players. And in fact, having that advantage is huge. Picks off a Queen, gets the creep tumor, is going to deny all these producing ones. And we've seen it very big in this series. uThermal has shut down creep spread like no one else in this TvZ matchup. The Queen's trying to get that medevac. He's going to barely survive. On fire once again, Roddy.
Yep. It's not
deflating medevac.
I mean, uThermal is really good in being active with multiple medevacs at once. I mean, this is something that he was even doing already in Heart of the Swarm. But sometimes he got carried away by his own fanciness. You know, it was a drop here, a drop there, and then he didn't really have all that much at home. And then the Protoss or something would just walk across the map and kill him. But that doesn't happen anymore. uThermal is so good in reading the state of the game in almost any scenario that he finds himself in. And because of his aggressive playstyle, I do feel that he often has more experience in these low eco games than most Zerg players do.
Yep. I mean, it's just a crazy scenario, right? He's still going straight up. We see the infestation pit has finished. Hive is on the way before 1-1 completes. He wants Ultralisks, and he wants them now, Roddy.
Yeah, I mean, he does. I mean, Serral is currently sitting pretty comfortably at 68 drones. The fact that his fourth base is late is not necessarily the end of the world because it was very late on Frost 2. Of course, the big problem is that Frozen Temple is a much smaller map. It's going to be a lot easier for Serral to put on a lot of pressure, but the Queen count is still high. The army supply looks healthy for Serral. It will all come down to the fungals and, of course, the combination with Corrosive Bile, and make sure he doesn't take a lot of damage. Make sure you never end up losing that Ultralisk Cavern once your Hive actually finishes up.
Yep, that's very important. You have to keep that tech together. as we do have the Lings trying to push this army back. 3 tanks in the low ground. Biles going to try to hit him. We'll get one of the tanks. 2 are saved. And at the same time, Double Drop's going to hit on the natural expansion, picking up 10+ drones. He's still going ham in that natural. The drop in the main base was also pushed back. We saw at the same time. These Marines and Marauders are still going ham. The pressure at the front is heading towards the third base. 17 drones have been killed, and uThermal racking up an insane kill count. He's got that main drop on the fourth base, picking off the hatcher, hitting in 3 places at once.
Exactly, he's attacking at 3 places at once, and he's never making it easy, never just throwing away these units, always picking them up again. And Serral is obviously struggling here a little bit. He ends up losing his fourth base, which sucks. What sucks even more is that he lost 21 drones. That's not nice, Nate, when you want to go into ultras.
Absolutely not. He needs that money. He doesn't have it. Gets a fungal on 1 medevac. He's going to push this back. There's still 3 tanks, a 4th showing up, and a huge army for our Dutch Terran player.
Yep, the reinforcements have arrived as more and more Marines and Marauders are making their way across the map. Queens are getting picked off one by one. I mean, as Serral, like, where do you find a window to throw down that building to even try to get up to ultras? And obviously walking down this ramp is not a very good idea against 6-7 tanks.
Absolutely not. Those tanks have created an almost impenetrable fortress here outside of his base. The Marine Marauder micro has been top-notch. And look at this medevac count. He's got heals for days, pushing these Ravagers back, pushing these Queens back. He retreats into the siege tank line, and despite that hive, despite the Ultra Cavern, Serral cannot afford to build the tech that he needs to fight against the Bio army.
I mean, this is great control here by uThermal. Just a great series by him. He's been relentless with his aggression. He's been relentless with the multitasking, and that's going to be it.
GG, uThermal advances on.
He played so good, Nate. I definitely think that Serral played a lot better than we've seen him play in a little while. I really love the way that he played in a couple of these games. I thought Frost was a great game. I think on Galactic Process he did a great job in not dying, but uThermal is showing us once again that he is awesome in Terran versus Zerg, and that Intel Extreme Masters was not a fluke by any means. I mean, this was great Terran play.
It was superb Terran play. I mean, we saw all the hallmarks of a great harassed player, hitting with the drops everywhere. Fantastic micro with all of the Reapers that he was able to use in the game. Like, everything there was just so good to watch. And at the same time, Serral did a great job. Like, I'm actually blown away that he survived as long as he did. The fact that he made it up to Ultralisks with Infestors and Ravagers in Galactic Process, I still don't actually understand how he was able to do that. Like, how did he not die to all the pressure that was coming at him from every possible direction the entire game?
What I think makes uThermal the biggest nightmare for Zergs to play against is that he doesn't just drop everywhere at once. He's never that reckless with his drops. Like, you've got units, I'm going to pick them up. And what I think he often does is he sends them away, he sends them back immediately. You know, it's just like a shift move, because he knows the moment that he sends a medevac away that the Zerg is going to pull his units away, and then he comes back again. I mean, we made fun of that medevac on Galactic Process, but it was insane for how long that medevac was active on the other side of the map. Every time enough roaches and Zerglings showed up, he picked up the Marines, flew away. 10 seconds later, he's like, I'm back again. You know, that's so annoying if you don't have any air units to deal with something like that. Like, once Terran players get extremely good at that, it's very difficult to play against.
Yep, Queens are solid anti-air choices for Zerg in this meta with their range, but I tell you what, not having the Mutas or the Corruptors to actually chase down those medevacs once they run away is a nightmare. In uThermal, we see it here. He was pushing at the front, he was dropping in the main, he was dropping in the natural, and as soon as he got forced to reposition, he always went to the right place. Like, okay, you want to clean up the natural? Well, this drop's going to go to your 4th, and I'm going to push my main army straight up into your 3rd, and you're going to have just endless, non-stop pressure hitting you from every possible direction.
Yep, I loved it. I believe that he's ready, so we're going to hear from Smix and the man himself who just advanced to the round of 16, uThermal.
Thank you very much, Rotterdam. It seems your Dutch brother does move on to the top 16. So first of all, congratulations. I know you're coming off of a hot victory at IEM Shanghai, and now here you're already on to the top 16. So what are your initial thoughts moving on there?
I mean, it was kind of expected, I think. I was a bit worried after game 1, but I think it's just the start of the tournament for me, so it doesn't mean that much yet. I want to go a lot further.
So with that first loss out of the way, did you just treat that as, okay, just warming up my hands, I need to just get in the game, just move forward?
Yeah, actually I thought it was a really lame game because I got the cross position. No, because I lost. But like the cross positions, and then the entire game was like just each other dragging back and forth, and then there was one fight at the end. So I think I just lost because of the positions, and maybe I didn't play the late game well enough, but I don't think it mattered that much. I was a bit worried going into game 2 because it was a really Zerg favorite map and I chose a gamble strategy. But even if I would have gone 0-2, I think I would still be confident. So.
Now, I know that in TvZ you really like to go through your X Reaper. We actually saw you do it a lot at IM Shanghai as well. I think a lot of people now have just come to familiarize that strategy with you. And I'm sure that Serral was familiar with this as well. And despite that, he did lose to it. So what do you think it is? Do you think you're just very good at the execution, or what do you think it is?
I just think people don't really know the correct counter because on Apotheosis, it's just kind of he just went for a really greedy build, so he died. But the Galactic game is probably a lot more interesting because even though like he always scouted, but it's very holdable. It's just he didn't really know what he was doing. I think like he made 2 spines and then still lost like all his larva. That's like 20 larva that game. So I just think he didn't really know what to do. And for me, it's not that I'm good with the Reaper. I just really like the build to build momentum. So it's more like it's just a fitting build for me. I don't think I'm amazing with Reapers or anything. It's just
I think you're being modest there.
Yeah.
I think you're being a little bit modest.
I'm pretty
there,
sure I saw one point where Serral took all his queens and he was like, I'm gonna kill these Reapers. They're flying around my base. They're so annoying, and he finally did get them. But Maynard, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are obviously your early game's pretty good. I think your Reaper control is outstanding, as much as you don't think it is. Maybe you're just being a little bit hard on yourself. But I saw that you have a pretty great late game as well. A couple late game victories there. Getting up to the Ultralists. Yeah. You got to fight against that Zerg late game.
I think my early late game is fine.
So do you even have any weaknesses?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Don't tell them. I just wanted to know yes or no.
Okay.
Don't yeah, I mean.
Won't say anything.
Yeah, there might be guys, might be further opponents playing, so. Yeah. How do you feel about, like, did you just prepare for, similar to Shanghai, where you sort of just prepare for the first round and then whatever happens, happens? You didn't really...
Well, no, I tried to prepare for every opponent.
Oh.
I try to, like, for example, I don't know when my next opponents are playing. I think they're
probably
playing,
tomorrow.
I think they're playing quite late, so I'll probably know after like 10 or something. But then when I get back to the hotel, I'll just study some VODs and make some notes. And I mean, if I play Neeb, I already have notes on him because I played him last week.
Yeah.
And we know how that turned out.
Yeah, I mean,
4-2.
Can't be unhappy with that.
And I'm just curious because I feel like a lot of players, especially when they come off of winning a tournament, of course there's the adrenaline rush and obviously a huge successful victory for your career, but a lot of times we often see a player after a victory sort of disappear. Either they just stop practicing because they're like, okay, that was, I have a trophy now, I have this fat check, I'm going to take a break, I'm going to relax. But here, you still seem like you're in good form, you still seem like you're thirsty for another victory here. So what is it like personally for you?
Yeah, well, I think most of those players, it's kind of deserved when they win a championship, they can go and slack a bit. But for me, I mean, it's like last week I was home for 1 day before coming here. So, and I think most of my victories were like preparation victories rather than just pure skill or whatever you want to call it. So
I think preparation is also, there's a skill involved in that, I would say, Maynard.
Yeah, but
well,
it's different.
You got to know what you're looking for and that sort of thing. And obviously a pro game is always going to know, you're going to be able to dissect your opponents pretty easily, as you have been so far. Yeah. Hopefully that continues for uThermal fans out there, including myself. But so who would you possibly be playing against if you looked at the bracket and what you got coming up next, possibly?
Neeb.
Possibly Neeb.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know about that guy.
I think that'll be a really interesting rematch there if that does end up being the bracket.
I think it'll be a pretty damn hype rematch.
Yeah. In fact, the results of this tournament have been quite interesting. Thank you very much. By the way, congratulations again on moving on to the top 16. If you guys haven't been watching, we've had some interesting upsets. Hydra's out and Showtime is out now. I think a lot of people would be surprised to see that. And of course, after this break, we do have another exciting match coming up. It will be Hearthstone versus Aigoo, so don't go anywhere.